Chapter 430. The Strongest Loneliness, and How had a dream in which he found himself seated upon an immensely grand chair, with a chelan crawling at his feet and true dragons swirling around his hands. Below him was a radiant starry sky, and figures exuding powerful auras floated beneath him like a series of steps. The sensation was incredibly wonderful. He felt as if he had control over everything and even experienced a sense of loneliness. Immersed in this feeling, he lost track of time. He did not know how much time had passed when suddenly, a dazzling golden light burst from the depth of the universe below and rushed towards him, turning the powerful figures along its path into ash. The golden light shone on Anhao's face, making it feel scorching hot to the point of burning. Anhao suddenly opened his eyes, gasping for breath with sweat covering his forehead and his pupils still trembling. What met his gaze was the twilight sky, and his eyes instinctively caught the sight of the figure of the Annihilation God Emperor. The Annihilation God Emperor stood nearby, gazing up at the sky, seemingly lost in thought. Anhao sat up and was about to stand when the Annihilation God Emperor's finger pressed on his forehead, rendering him immobile. At that moment, Anhao felt his mana and chi blood freeze, making him extremely uncomfortable. Having reached the Nirvana realm, he had felt so powerful, confident to handle anything. But at that moment he felt as if he had returned to the mortal realm, feeling his own insignificance once again. He looked up at the Annihilation God Emperor, his expression of shock rapidly turning into one of resentment. You have the same look in your eyes as he did, possessing the same life grid, but you are still far from his level, the Annihilation God Emperor said, looking down at Anhao. Anhao gritted his teeth and asked, "Who is he?" "His name cannot be mentioned. This entire great heaven and earth cannot bear its consequences. If mentioned, this great heaven and earth would instantaneously turn into nothingness." Anhao's eyes widened. It was the first time he heard of such power. Neither the Yangxian Emperor nor Holy Heaven could achieve such feats. Having traversed so many great heaven and earths, it is rare to encounter someone with such a grand life grid as yours. I grant you a divine skill. Now it remains to be seen how high you can reach. As he spoke, the Annihilation God Emperor's index finger emitted demonic chi, which burrowed into Anhao's forehead. Anhao, unable to move, was extremely nervous. As the demonic chi entered his body, he did not feel any discomfort, which made him even more uneasy. The Annihilation God Emperor withdrew his hand and said, "What you saw earlier were the memories of that being. Remember that sensation. It is the power you must strive with all your might to pursue." With those words, the Annihilation God Emperor vanished from the spot. Anhao then, freed from constraint, swiftly got up. He could no longer sense the presence of the Annihilation God Emperor. Not a trace was left, as if everything he had experienced was just an illusion. Who exactly is he? Anhao furrowed his brows, touching his forehead subconsciously, feeling that he had gotten himself into big trouble. Meanwhile, far away in the Third Medicine Valley, Guan withdrew his gaze. When the Annihilation God Emperor approached Anhao, he had been paying attention. This Annihilation God Emperor was merely a free immortal in terms of cultivation level. If he dared to harm Anhao, Guan could eradicate him even faster, but it seemed as though the Annihilation God Emperor intended to bring an opportunity to Anhao. After the Annihilation God Emperor left, Guan checked Anhao's fate once more, and found that his future had changed. Anhao was already on the path of the chosen, but after receiving the legacy from the Annihilation God Emperor, Anhao grew even stronger, which reminded Guan of Longzhan and Luhan, who could just barely surpass him. What exactly is the origin of the Annihilation God Emperor? What does a higher realm refer to? Guan looked up, and beyond the outer heaven was the universe, surrounded by the silent destruction domain. The entire universe seemed infinitely vast, with no end to be seen in any direction. His gaze involuntarily fell upon the boundary gate, guarded by the heavenly spirit god. Perhaps to reach beyond the universe, one must pass through that gate. But approaching the boundary gate would mean destruction by the heavenly spirit god, a terrifying existence capable of effortlessly annihilating the Taoist hidden immortal. Guan then thought of the immortals he had encountered. It seemed that there were even more terrifying and vast beings above the immortal path. "Master, the sect leader is here to see you." A disciple ran up to Guan and whispered. Guan, standing in front of a wooden railing, withdrew his gaze and nodded to the disciple, then walked towards his loft. Returning to the room, Guan saw LV Batian, who immediately rose to greet him. "I've told you so many times, there's no need for such formality, it feels so alienating," Guan complained. As LV Batian watched him walk over and sit down, he finally spoke. "I was ignorant before. Knowing your true identity now, proper courtesy must be observed." Guan's face remained unchanged, but he was pleased inside. Old LV really understood people's hearts. He invited LV Batian to sit, and asked why he had come. "Your disciple Sujia had a conflict with a family. It was a misunderstanding, and I have had the family release him, and have tried hard to ease the relationship. However, Sujia is still unhappy," LV Batian began, his face showing helplessness as he spoke. Due to the prior incident with the Wu Ju, LV Batian dared not be careless. With such extraordinary talent, Sujia likely had Guan's guidance behind him. He had to handle the situation carefully. Guan replied nonchalantly, "If he's unhappy, so be it. The supreme sect must not indulge him." LV Batian pondered the underlying meaning of Guan's words and responded, "He's still young after all, and his talent is indeed rare. He reminds me of an Hao in his earlier years." Mentioning an Hao made him think of an Xian, and his expression turned strange. When many things were connected, they seemed so absurd. He also wondered what an Hao's feelings would be if he knew all this. An Hao didn't know who his own master was, only knowing that his master had transformed into Sword Venerable Fudao. Are there a shortage of geniuses in this world now? Just treat him normally, no need to consider me. He is just a passerby from the Third Medicine Valley and has not truly become my disciple," Guan said carelessly. Hearing this, LV Batian became even more interested in Sujia. Without the guidance of Sword Venerable Fudao, Sujia had still shown such talent. Such a genius must be properly cultivated. The key was to bring him under his command, to become his strength. Seeing Guan truly uninterested in Sujia, LV Batian started discussing other matters, hoping Guan would provide guidance for the future development of the Supreme Sect. A full ancient hour passed before LV Batian finally left. Guan personally saw him down the stairs. Before parting, the two kept bowing to each other, causing nearby disciples to talk. Guan looked at LV Batian's departing figure, and noticed that LV Batian's karma had changed. Killer calamity. He immediately calculated LV Batian's life grid, and his expression became strange. Due to his words today, LV Batian would face calamity. LV Batian would find death due to Sujia. Chapter 431. Involuntarily in Guan's projections, LV Batian would focus on nurturing Sujia in the future, treating him as the next sect leader to be groomed, and even betrothed the daughter of the LV family's patriarch to Sujia, as if she were his own child. Sujia did not disappoint LV Batian. His growth rate was not inferior to an Hao's, and he too took an Hao as his target. 500 years later, when an Hao returned, Sujia, overrating his own ability, challenged an Hao. Even though an Hao suppressed his cultivation level, he still easily defeated Sujia. After that, Sujia's personality drastically changed, becoming paranoid. He practiced cultivation even more diligently, treating getting stronger as the most important thing. He even schemed for LV Batian's defying fate divine skill, and eventually succeeded in persuading LV Batian to pass on the skill to him. After the transmission of the skill, LV Batian became a cripple and returned to the LV family, only to have the LV family attacked by Sujia's enemies. In that chaos, LV Batian died. Although Guan could see the future, he was not panicked, because he knew these events would occur only if he did not intervene. To deduce cause and effect, one must set oneself aside, an approach that allows for more accurate foresight. This is why many who are aware of their heavenly destiny refuse to engage in worldly affairs, because they cannot predict the choices they would make in the future, and thus they try not to change the course of the world. Guan was not displeased with Sujia because of this. He was more reflective on both of their fates. LV Batian's choice to choose Sujia brought disaster upon himself, and it wasn't that Sujia intended to harm him. It could only be said that fate was playing tricks on people. One thought can turn one into a demon or make one an immortal. But who really knows whether their own thought is right or wrong? Guan muttered to himself, truly moved. Downstairs, the blood prison great saint looked up, pondering the words of his master. Could it be that LV Batian was about to become a demon? That would be just great. The blood prison great saint had no fondness for LV Batian at all. Knowing that LV Batian might be in trouble, he only felt schadenfreude, even looking forward to LV Batian disappointing Guan. After watching for a while, Guan turned and walked back inside the house. Night fell, and the lights of the third medicine valley lit up one after another, revealing the mortal world's charms. 20 years later, in the third medicine valley, the sunlight was bright, birds circled above, and the shapes of disciples practicing cultivation could be seen everywhere, with supreme sect disciples riding demon birds flying across the sky. Guan lay underneath the mystic pure tree with his hands behind his head, looking at his attribute panel. Name: Guan. Lifespan: 899/1, 393, 608, 114. Physique: Mixed Yuan Dao Golden Body. Cultivation level: Perfect Xian Yuan Zizai Immortal Realm. Almost 1 billion years of lifespan, and close to 900 years old. Guan, looking at his age, felt the passage of time, unaware of how old he had grown. Yet his mentality remained young, and he was still able to converse with some of the younger disciples. The fat as a buffalo white spirit rat came over and nuzzled his waist with its head, in a flattering manner. Guan paid it no attention. It followed and circled to his front and said in a low voice, "Master." It spoke in a childlike voice, indistinguishable between male or female. Last year, the white spirit rat had just learned to speak the human language. Its growth also brought liveliness to the third medicine valley. Almost every disciple who entered the valley had been bullied by it. It had a strong presence in the third medicine valley, and the disciples respectfully kept their distance. After all, it was the master's demon pet. They couldn't fight back even if bullied by it. "Spit it out if you have something to say," Guan said impatiently, looking at the white spirit rat with annoyance. The creature had recently been pestering him to raise a batch of female rabbit demons, which he found quite disgraceful. How could he, so esteemed and virtuous, have raised such a demon pet? Guan thought of the 3 Tianyao sisters and the deep-sea dragon carp, seeming somewhat abnormal as well. In contrast, the blood prison great saint was quite steady. He would focus on nurturing the blood prison great saint from now on. "Master, I had a dream earlier, where I was cultivating, and I still remember. It was a fist technique. Would you take a look?" The white spirit rat said softly, its beady eyes filled with excitement. Because of its obesity, it lacked the cunning look of a rat demon, appearing rather foolish instead. Guan sat up and said, "I want to see what fist technique you can comprehend." The white spirit rat spent years meditating under the mystic pure tree, consuming heavenly materials and earthly treasures, and its maximum lifespan kept increasing. In a way, this was also a talent, as not everyone could increase their lifespan just by being under the mystic pure tree. The white spirit rat jumped aside and then stood up, supporting its body on its fatty hind legs. Under Guan's gaze, the white spirit rat started to perform fists. As it threw its punches, gusts of wind kicked up the grass, drawing the attention of nearby disciples. Guan's expression was odd. The white spirit rat's fist technique was not impressive, clearly mimicking Longqing's moves, yet a mountain of flesh-throwing punches was very bizarre. To say it was comical, but its body moved rhythmically, each punch was executed with precision. After the white spirit rat had demonstrated a set of fist techniques, it turned to look at Guan with a hopeful expression. Guan pondered for a moment and said seriously, "Not bad, you can challenge Qing'an now." Upon hearing this, the white spirit rat was overjoyed and immediately bade farewell to Guan. It was off to challenge Longqing. After sending off the white spirit rat, Guan continued to lie down, enjoying his leisure time. Doing nothing but lying there was quite interesting too. However, this peaceful life was about to be shattered. The Annihilation God Emperor, who had been traveling the mortal world, had already arrived at the Supreme Sect. Judging by his pace, it would only be a matter of time before he entered the Third Medicine Valley. Wherever the Annihilation God Emperor went among crowds, He would disguise himself as a cultivator, and so he did at the Supreme Sect. With 1,000 faces for 1,000 people, no one could remember the visage he had transformed into. Time continued to pass. An ancient hour later, a figure entered the third medicine valley. A man in blue clothes with an ordinary face and no eye-catching magic artifacts adorning him. It was the Annihilation God Emperor. As he stepped into the third medicine valley, he looked around, as if in search of something. A disciple approached to greet him, and inquired about his business. The Medicine Valley disciple was very polite, and did not posture. The Annihilation God Emperor said, "I'm looking for Ji Xiaoyu." Ji Xiaoyu? The Medicine Valley disciple paused, thought for a while, and then remembered, saying, "Elder Ji has been in seclusion for many years and has not seen anyone. I have been here at Medicine Valley for many years without having seen her. It's fine, I'll just look around. Your Medicine Valley allows that, right? Of course, you're free to do as you wish. If you have any needs, feel free to ask me. Much appreciated." The Annihilation God Emperor responded, and the Medicine Valley disciple followed up with a bow before leaving. Afterwards, the Annihilation God Emperor continued forward. When he passed by the dojo, he turned his head to look, but after a mere glance he withdrew his gaze and did not pause in his footsteps. 2 female disciples walked towards him, one of whom was Yu Yingying. "I told you before that the heavenly colored evergreen grass needs constant attention. You didn't listen. Do you know how many top-grade spirit stones are lost with one plant?" Yu Yingying complained, while the woman beside her was almost crying, her lips quivering. As the Annihilation God Emperor was about to pass by Yu Yingying, he suddenly said, "For one facing imminent death, you've managed to live quite tenaciously." Upon hearing this, Yu Yingying stopped in her tracks, looking suspiciously at the Annihilation God Emperor. She knew that she was a reincarnation of a heavenly demon, and with Gu An's help over the years, her cultivation level had been continuously growing. Although not a genius, at least she was far from her lifespan's limit. Hearing the words of the Annihilation God Emperor, Yu Yingying instinctively panicked. "Are you talking to me?" Yu Yingying stared at the Annihilation God Emperor and asked. The Annihilation God Emperor did not stop, continuing on his way, leaving behind a perplexing comment for Yu Yingying. "Cherish the present. There will come a time when you are powerless to control your fate." A time when she is powerless to control her fate? Yu Yingying furrowed her brows, immediately feeling uneasy. The Annihilation God Emperor eventually reached Gu An's pavilion, where the Blood Prison Great Saint looked up at him, his eyes filled with curiosity. "Reincarnation Path Emperor, aren't you going to show yourself?" The Annihilation God Emperor spoke, saying words that Shinxinzi, who was eavesdropping from afar, could not hear. After hearing what the Annihilation God Emperor had said to Yu Yingying, Shinxinzi became curious and puzzled about him. But unfortunately, the Annihilation God Emperor did not allow his eavesdropping to continue. "Reincarnation Path Emperor?" The Blood Prison Great Saint promptly stood up, watching the Annihilation God Emperor warily. The Annihilation God Emperor glanced at him and said, "Future Great Saint, sit down. Pretend you saw nothing, heard nothing. My future identity has been seen through by him? He is a real master. How extraordinary!" Blood Prison Great Saint's heart raced with excitement as he began to fantasize about his own future greatness. He was not afraid of the Annihilation God Emperor Chaos. Chapter 432. 10 million incarnations. While the Blood Prison Great Saint was still lost in his vivid fantasies, Ji Xiaoyu's room door opened. Dressed in black, Ji Xiaoyu stepped out of the house, her gaze settling on the Annihilation God Emperor, filled with doubt. The Annihilation God Emperor's gaze rested on Ji Xiaoyu, his expression remaining calm. At this moment, the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared beside Ji Xiaoyu, vigilantly staring at the Annihilation God Emperor. "Who might you be?" the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor asked in a deep voice, his eyes betraying a strong sense of wariness. He, strong as a divine thought true immortal, couldn't see through the Annihilation God Emperor's cultivation level at all, which gave him the same feeling he got when facing Guan. The Annihilation God Emperor spoke up. "Reincarnation Path Emperor, you should remember me." He completely ignored the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, feeling like the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor wasn't worthy of conversation. Upon hearing this, Ji Xiaoyu's face changed dramatically, her expression one of disbelief, her body trembling as she struggled to compose herself. Seeing her like this made the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor even more nervous, while the Blood Prison Great Saint curiously looked at Ji Xiaoyu. Seeing her in such a state for the first time, taking a deep breath, Ji Xiaoyu raised her hand in salute and said, "The junior has seen the Divine Emperor. May I ask why the Divine Emperor has personally come to the great heaven and earth?" The Divine Emperor? The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared to realize something. His look towards the Annihilation God Emperor filled with reverence. He stepped back, half kneeling, bowing his proud head. The Blood Prison Great Saint was even more curious about the identity of the Annihilation God Emperor, his blood beginning to boil. The stronger the Annihilation God Emperor, the more likely his words would come true. He might yet become a great saint of the great heavenly spirit land. The Annihilation God Emperor said, "I am here to find someone, a remnant of the ancient evil demons." Ancient evil demons? Ji Xiaoyu asked in surprise. Descendant from the long family of the battle court. The answer from the Annihilation God Emperor made Ji Xiaoyu's pupils widen sharply. Ji Xiaoyu asked with a frown, "That clan still has descendants? Weren't they already extinct?" The Annihilation God Emperor stared at her and queried, "Do you really not know?" Ji Xiaoyu fell silent. The Annihilation God Emperor continued, "I am aware your master is from the Dragon Clan, but you must have seen their malice. Should a living person carry such hatred, the catastrophe he could cause is beyond what you or I could foresee." That would not be a catastrophe for one great heaven and earth, but a crisis for the entire universe. Ji Xiaoyu replied, "I really don't know, and currently I am undergoing the reincarnation tribulation. I have memories but not the genuine feelings of my true self." The Annihilation God Emperor turned around, his gaze sweeping over the third Medicine Valley. Ji Xiaoyu followed his gaze, her heart suddenly trembling as she realized his gaze had fallen on Guan. Guan lay beneath the mystic pure tree, his eyes covered by leaves, as if he were sleeping. The Annihilation God Emperor looked at Guan, pausing for a while before shifting his gaze elsewhere. Ji Xiaoyu didn't dare disturb him, waiting for him to speak. If she felt this way, the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor was no different. After a long time, the Annihilation God Emperor turned his head towards Ji Xiaoyu and said, "Indeed, his aura and causality are nowhere in this land, but I will draw him out. Once you conclude this lifetime, you may come to assist me, and I will not leave you unrewarded." Having said this, the Annihilation God Emperor transformed into his true form, his black robe fluttering, his scale armor glinting with a chilly light, and the darkness beneath his helmet startled the Blood Prison Great Saint enough to widen his eyes. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor glanced over subconsciously, equally intimidated by the Annihilation God Emperor's appearance. The Annihilation God Emperor vanished into thin air. Far away, Shinxinzi, though unable to hear their conversation, saw the true figure of the Annihilation God Emperor and was startled, rising involuntarily. Not just him. Some curious disciples also witnessed the transformation of the Annihilation God Emperor. However, the sudden disappearance of the Annihilation God Emperor gave them the illusion that they were seeing things. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor stood up, took a step forward, and asked in a low voice, "Could it be that one from the legends of the Silent Destruction Domain?" Ji Xiaoyu looked up towards the sky and softly said, "Yes, that's the one." The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared to be in a trance, and he couldn't help but ask, "Wasn't that just a legend? It actually exists. Your Majesty, what is your relationship with him?" Ji Xiaoyu replied, "I have once received the inheritance he left behind and communicated with his divine thoughts. He could be considered one of my mentors, and this was also the first time I truly saw him. The one just now must have been only an avatar." "Avatar?" The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor exclaimed. "Yes, an avatar. He has countless avatars spread across different worlds, all searching for his own way." Ji Xiaoyu's gaze became distant, as if filled with longing. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor fell silent, equally shaken. The Blood Prison Great Saint, on the other hand, contemptuously thought to himself, why doesn't such a powerful being dare to take a walk in front of the master? In his view, the Annihilation God Emperor was wary of Guan. Time continued to pass. As dusk approached, Guan sat up. He stretched lazily, having had a very comfortable sleep. He even had a dream, as if he had experienced lifespan samsara. But it was not as real as the memories left by lifespan samsara. This made Guan want to start another round of lifespan samsara. He stood up and walked towards the attic, spotting the white spirit rat on the way, which was looking at him with a plaintive gaze. Guan noticed that one of its legs was twitching, clearly injured. It had been at a disadvantage at Longqing's place. Fortunately, the breakthrough deepened their path of returning primordial spirit. Guan said with a smile, a smug look on his face. Being cautious was always right. When he arrived at the front of his attic, Ji Xiaoyu walked out from inside. Let's go up to talk. Ji Xiaoyu came up to Guan and suggested in a low voice. After that, she went up the stairs first, with Guan following behind. Once upstairs and in the room, Ji Xiaoyu began to cast spells, setting up restrictions around the room to prevent others from spying, even utilizing the power of the primordial Taoist talisman. Is it that serious? Guan feigned surprise. Ji Xiaoyu fixed her gaze on Guan, her eyes complex. Guan touched his face and asked, "What's the matter? Have you awakened memories of your past life? Or rather, have you not gone through reincarnation tribulation at all? Who exactly are you?" Ji Xiaoyu asked softly. Guan laughed and inquired, "Who do you think I am?" Ji Xiaoyu looked at him and said, "You take in orphans and give them the Long surname. Could it be that your real surname is Long?" Suspecting him Longqing? Guan couldn't help but smile wryly. "Wrong guess, I'm actually the ancestor of the Dragon clan." Guan shook his head and said, "How could that be? My surname is Gu. Giving Longqing the Long surname is because he has it on his back. You've known that all along, haven't you?" Ji Xiaoyu responded, "I have known for a long time, but I've also always had my suspicions. It's okay if you don't admit it, and it's best if you never do because there are beings out there to kill you that have come here. That being is from the ancient legends of the Silent Destruction Domain, and may have existed even longer than the Great Heavenly Spirit Land. He is convinced that you are hiding in the Great Heavenly Spirit Land, and he will not rest until he finds you." Guan, resigned, said, "I'm truly not the person you think I am, but I am quite curious about this being you mentioned. Is he very strong?" Chapter 433. Chivalrous Reincarnation. Yang Xian. He is naturally very strong, perhaps the most powerful being I remember, and I don't even know how high his Tao level is, but one thing is certain. If he discovers your true identity, or if you offend him, you won't stand a chance. Ji Xiaoyu looked at Guan and spoke seriously, her tone somewhat cold. Guan didn't get angry but was surprised as he asked, "That impressive? Do you admire him?" Ji Xiaoyu frowned and said, "How could that be possible? I am just worried about your safety. He will take action next, and you must practice restraint. Avoid revealing yourself, and try not to make a move if possible." "What kind of move could I make? I'm just an ordinary farming cultivator," said Guan with a shrug. The more he acted like this, the more vexed Ji Xiaoyu became, thinking him too arrogant. Seeing her about to erupt, Guan continued, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing and am really not who you think I am." Ji Xiaoyu calmed her emotions and said, "It's good as long as you understand." After that, she released the power of the primordial Taoist talisman, and walked past Guan. Guan turned to look at her and asked, "Are you leaving just like that?" "Yes, I need to continue my cultivation," Ji Xiaoyu said without turning back. Guan didn't try to persuade her further, feeling helpless inside. "I really am not a descendant of the Dragon clan." As for the Annihilation God Emperor, he did indeed feel wary, but not towards this Annihilation God Emperor. It was the original one he was cautious of. Guan sat in his own chair, and took out a leisure book to distract himself. Regardless, it was a good thing that the Annihilation God Emperor hadn't recognized him as Longqing, nor had he seen through Longqing's real identity. It proved that Guan still had time to grow. In this life, he wasn't going to be as reckless as Long Zhan. A year later, The 900-year-old and Exian came to the hidden spirit palace where first he gathered medicinal herbs, with the deep-sea dragon carp following closely behind, carrying the basket for him. This herb, my junior sister should like it. This one for Jiang Qiong, it hasn't been easy for her. These are for Tian Yaoer, she has a big appetite. Guan mumbled to himself while picking the herbs. The deep-sea dragon carp had grown accustomed to this. He didn't speak. With his long hair reaching his feet, wearing white clothes and an elegant demeanor, like a gentle woman. His eyes seemed to hold tenderness, a face full of feminine charm, making it difficult to guess that he was a male demon. When Guan finished gathering, he took the basket and handed a bag of seeds to the deep-sea dragon carp. As the deep-sea dragon carp began to plant the seeds, Guan walked to the entrance of the hidden spirit palace and sat on his rocking chair, taking out a book. The water above shimmered, and the whole dojo was quiet, a perfect atmosphere for reading, occasionally complemented by the sound of whale calls, which struck the soul. An hour later, Guan finished savoring the book in his hand, pressed it to his chest, and started to reflect. The spirit of chivalry is precious. Who says immortal cultivation is only about benefits and lacks chivalry? Guan talked to himself, his tone full of emotion. Having finished reading the swordman book, he wished to wander the mortal world, live the life of a chivalrous swordsman. However, he had to maintain his schedule of gathering medicinal herbs. If he had his clone do it or squeezed in the time, the experience wouldn't be the same. Forget about it. It's nice to think about. Wait, why not live a chivalrous life in the lifespan samsara? Guan opened his eyes, sprang up, and tucked the book into his chest. It was time to start a new journey. And this wouldn't be a waste of lifespan. Lifespan samsara could enhance his understanding of the Tao rules. His character for this reincarnation shouldn't be so stubborn. He must have a compassionate heart. So Guan thought, and with a thought, a series of prompts appeared before his eyes. You will spend 10 million years of lifespan to initiate a reincarnation evolution. Beginning to connect with the Tao rules. Searching for a reincarnation world. You have the following great heaven and earth choices, pick any one. First, the dark heaven and earth. Second, the Dahong realm. Third, Xianqing great heaven and earth. It's the dark heaven and earth again. Guan really wanted to try his luck with the Black Profound Emperor, but his intuition told him that if he chose Black Profound Emperor this time, the Black Profound Emperor would surely be even more terrifying. Forget it. There's no need to mess around. Since he had chosen a life of chivalry, he should choose a world of lesser strength. Guan thought that the Dahong realm should be weaker than the great heaven and earth. Let it be the Dahong realm. You choose to reincarnate in the Dahong realm. Given that the Tao rules of this world cannot conceal your talent, you will retain the ability to seize lifespan, but you cannot activate the phased functions. Reincarnation evolution begins. In the first year, you were born inside the purple micro-immortal mansion, and you were named Yang Xian by your parents. At the age of 5, your father began to teach you the ways of immortal cultivation. That day you demonstrated exceptional insight, stunning the purple micro-immortal mansion. At the age of 8, you mastered your family's swordsmanship to great success and comprehended sword intent. At the age of 12, when the purple micro-immortal mansion hosted a banquet for cultivators from various sects, you met an old man who said you had an extraordinary life grid and wanted to tell your fortune. Will you choose to agree? Wow. Why is there another person trying to tell fortunes? Guan could hardly bear to let the other party suffer a loss, so he chose no. You refuse to let the other party tell your fortune. The person feels somewhat disappointed and bids you farewell. At the age of 15, you condensed a golden core with sword intent within, becoming an unmatched prodigy the purple micro-immortal mansion hadn't encountered in 10,000 years. At the age of 17, you were sent by the purple micro-immortal mansion to the 10,000 sword immortal ridge. On the way, you encountered someone being attacked by a demon cultivator, whose wife and children had already been slain. You felt compassionate, but the elder accompanying you advised you not to interfere too much. Will you choose to intervene and save them? Here it comes. Time to kick off the immortal chivalrous life. Save them. Ignoring the elder's advice, you forcefully step in. The attackers are relentless and even start to besiege you. Out of desperation, you execute your swordsmanship, slaying the demon cultivator leader, and accidentally seize 87 years of lifespan, marking a turning point in your destiny. Here it comes. Guan had been wondering why there had been no prompt about seizing lifespan. It turns out this kid had never taken a life. Only at the age of 17 did he discover the ability to seize lifespan, indicating he truly had a heart of great kindness. Guan also grew curious. Could it be that before starting the lifespan samsara, what he had in mind could determine the nature within the reincarnation? That's quite possible. In his previous reincarnation evolution, he had thought about surviving as much as possible, so his character in the reincarnation was more paranoid. At the age of 18, you arrive at the 10,000 Sword Immortal Ridge, where you stand out among the thousands of trialists, and you obtain your first immortal sword in this life, Jinghong. At the age of 19, after contemplating the sword intent of 10,000 Sword Immortal Ridge, you gain the appreciation of the ancestor of 10,000 Sword Immortal Tao, who wishes to take you as his disciple. Will you choose to agree? Definitely agree. What's there to hesitate about? Start getting stronger. Guan thought this and made his decision immediately. You choose to be apprenticed to the ancestor of 10,000 Sword Immortal Tao. You receive his instruction, and you begin to delve into the 10,000 Sword Immortal Tao. At 21, you finally step into the 10,000 Sword Immortal Tao. All of the swords in the 10,000 Sword Immortal Ridge tremble for you. The ancestor is very satisfied with you and starts to personally train you in swordsmanship. Wait a minute. Chapter 434 Sword Tao Life. Although it was impossible to determine Yang Xian's realm from the hints, he seemed very strong. Most importantly, he was only 21 years old. Guan contemplated as he read the information. He even felt that the Dahong realm was stronger than the usual great heaven and earth, casually decorated with the word immortal. At 25, your master, the founder of the 1,000 Swords Immortal, summoned you alone, the message read. When you went to see him, he claimed he wanted to pass on the position of head of the 1,000 Swords Immortal Peaks to you. If you accept the chi fortune of the 1,000 Swords Immortal Peaks, you will be able to command all the immortal swords, divine swords and treasure swords there, and even gain longevity, but the price is the loss of your freedom. Do you choose to accept the position? Lose my freedom? No way. No. Guan immediately refused. In this life he intended to experience the life of a chivalrous hero, not to pursue longevity. And what about the reincarnation Bodhi's original self, if it obtained longevity? You refused the position of head of the 1,000 Swords Immortal Peaks. The founder does not coerce you but assigns you an experience task to track down the eldest senior brother who has betrayed the sect. At 30, you arrive at Blood Deer City where the eldest senior brother was last seen. You meet Fong Meng, the city lord's daughter, and after a stream of fateful encounters, feelings blossom between you. Under her lead, you sneak into the underground city and come across a heritage, learning the killing sword technique. At 31, a mysterious cultivator attempts to sacrifice the entire city's population. You discover that he is the eldest senior brother you have been looking for. After a violent battle, he captures Fong Meng and threatens your life unless you destroy your sword intent. Do you choose to accept? Upon reading this, Guan mused that love was indeed a stumbling block for swordsmen. But as an aspiring swordman, how could he not save Fong Meng? If he listened to this eldest senior brother, he would be willingly surrendering. A dilemma. After a moment of struggle, Guan decided to trust Yang Xian. If the eldest senior brother felt threatened by Yang Xian, it indicated that he was wary of Yang Xian, who must also have an ace up his sleeve. If he died just like that, then it meant the path of chivalry was not viable. He would just read books in the future and give no further thought to it. Guan silently chose to agree. You agree to destroy your sword intent. You dissipate the sword intent within you and sustain serious injuries. Your eldest senior brother laughs wildly, mocking your foolishness and threatening to execute Fong Meng. At the critical moment, your master, the founder of the 1,000 Swords Immortal, acts. Using his finger as a sword from millions of miles away, he instantly kills your eldest senior brother. Enduring the pain, you catch Fong Meng as she falls from the sky. At 32, as you're contemplating the sword Dao in the courtyard, Feng Ming visits you. She confesses her true feelings, wishing to marry you and for you to inherit her father's legacy and walk the path of immortal cultivation again. Do you choose to accept her? No. Never marry. Without hesitation, Guan made the decision on behalf of Yang Xian. If the original self has not married, what right do you have? You reject Feng Ming's heartfelt proposal, leaving her deeply hurt. That night, you secretly leave Blood Deer City and pursue your own sword Dao. The subsequent hints were all about traveling and performing chivalrous deeds. Yang Xian did not return to the Thousand Swords Immortal Peaks, nor did he go back to the Purple Micro-Immortal Mansion. Seeing Yang Xian walk the path he wished to, Guan felt gratified. Yang Xian was more obedient than the previous reincarnation bodies. At 40, based on your years of acting heroically, you earn a good reputation, but you still cannot recondense sword intent, nor can your Dao level grow. You find yourself in a quandary, uncertain whether to engage in a killing tribulation, executing those extremely vicious to seize their lifespan, and thereby restore your sword Dao. Do you choose to undertake the killing tribulation? Kill extremely vicious people, what's there to hesitate about? Guan felt that taking lifespan did not conflict with being heroic. Being a hero didn't mean killing no one. What he had to do was to punish evil and promote good. You choose to undertake the killing tribulation, but another voice within cautions you, placing you in another dilemma. Voices urge you to take up the butcher's knife, warn you of the Demon King's initial intentions, and in the end, you choose not to engage in the killing tribulation, remaining true to your Taoist heart. In the esoteric process, you sense a wisp of sword intent close to you, yet invisible and intangible. It actually resists my choice? For the first time, Guan encountered such a situation. Fortunately, Yang Xian had his own realizations, which made Guan even more hopeful. At 41, while saving someone, you are severely injured by a great cultivator. You flee into the river and drift down into an isolated island, where you find an abandoned bamboo tower to recover. At 43, having observed the mist in the forest for a long time and contemplating the natural world, you begin to create your own swordsmanship. At 45, you founded 1,000 forms of swordsmanship, reconvened your sword intent, and you welcomed the path enlightenment. At 48, your achievement in the sword Dao surpassed what came before. Every blade of grass and tree seemed alive with intent, as did the mountains and rivers, and you embarked on a path of the sword Dao that belonged only to you. At the age of 50, a youth stumbled upon your island, mistaking you for an immortal, and wishing to take you as his master. As soon as he arrived, the bamboo swords you crafted quivered, and you sensed a sword intent from him. Realizing he was the innate sword intent the sword immortal ancestors spoke of, a person naturally suited for sword practice. Did you choose to take him as a disciple? Innate sword intent? Is it that formidable? Without much thought, Guan chose to agree. Taking a disciple was not a bad thing. After all, he himself had taken disciples. Every choice brings both fortune and misfortune. As long as he did not resist in his heart, willingness was sufficient. You chose to take the youth as a disciple, hearing that he was raised by bandits and had no real name. Thus you named him Yang Pingan. At 52, Yang Pingan had mastered all your sword techniques, but he could not yet perceive sword intent nor could he refine his own. Moving on, Yang Pingan's name appeared in every prompt. Yang Xian advanced his own understanding of the sword Dao, while observing Yang Pingan's cultivation. Guan was astonished. The natural talent of Yang Pingan in the sword Dao was truly exceptional, even exceeding Yang Xian's by some measure. At 60, your sword Dao reached even greater heights. That year, Yang Pingan desired to leave the island to gain experience. Did you choose to allow him to leave? No. Having only practiced for a few years? With such little skill going out, is he seeking death? You disagreed with Yang Pingan's departure. Dissatisfied, Yang Pingan thus agreed to the rule you set. He could leave to gain experience only after he defeated you. He dedicated himself to intensive cultivation. Reading this prompt, a bad premonition suddenly arose in Gu An's heart. Could it be that master and disciple will turn on each other later? As Guan pondered, He watched the incessant flow of prompts before him. It was still about cultivation, yet now included the challenges from Yang Pingan. Every 5 years, Yang Pingan would challenge Yang Xian, and according to the prompts, both master and disciple were growing rapidly. At 100, you once again ascended a step in your Sword Dao, and your consciousness peered into the Sword Dao river. You saw figures standing upon the river, and yearning for it. You drew closer only to encounter one of the figures swinging a sword at you, damaging your Sword Dao. Your consciousness retreated back to your body, and you found your sword intent temporarily dispersed, with your internal spiritual power also depleted. At this moment, your disciple Yang Pingan came to challenge you. Did you choose to consent to his challenge? Such terrible timing. Guan wanted to refuse, but on second thought, refusing meant showing weakness. Yang Pingan likely harbored no intent to kill him. It would be a good test of Yang Xian's true strength. Without sword intent and spiritual power, could Yang Xian still defeat Yang Pingan? You agreed to Yang Pingan's challenge, and after a fierce battle, both of you were injured, with Yang Pingan winning by a narrow margin. He shouted out excitedly, venting out years of repressed frustration, and you could only let him travel the world. Before parting, Yang Pingan gave you 3 deep kowtows, saying he would never forget the kindness of your teachings. At 101, your wounds healed. You reconvened your sword intent and gained new insights. Seeing Yang Xian actually lose, Guan felt helplessly resigned, but thankfully Yang Pingan still had some conscience. The path of practice continued. Yang Xian gave up the ability to seize lifespan, yet his growth rate remained swift. He secluded himself in the deep mountains without wandering out, delving into the Sword Dao, his cultivation advancing by leaps and bounds. Yang Pingan, however, did not return again. One prompt followed another. Quickly, time brought Yang Xian to the age of 500. At 507, you attained the accomplishment of perceiving everything in heaven and earth as a sword, and you buried all your swords at the bottom of a lake outside your island. At 508, a masked woman arrived at your island, claiming to be Fang Meng's daughter. Fang Meng was near death and wished to see you one last time. Did you choose to agree? Fang Meng? She actually had a daughter, but that was normal. Not all women can wait forever, especially since she was rejected by Yang Xian. With a sense of reminiscence in his heart, Guan then fell into hesitation. Chapter 435. Sword Saint. Great Hongdao Sky. After much hesitation, Guan still chose to agree. After all, it was Yang Xian's life, and considering the affection between Yang Xian and Fang Meng, even in the absence of love and with old acquaintances departing, a farewell was appropriate. You chose to agree to meet Fang Meng. You packed up and left that same day. In the same year, you arrived in Blood Deer City and saw Fang Meng. She lay on her bed, her face devoid of any color, and you noticed an energy within her similar to sword intent, but more complex and eerie. Upon investigation, you learned that Fang Meng had never married. The masked woman was a descendant of the Fang family. With her impending death, Fang Meng sought to test your feelings for her. Understanding the truth, you felt a mix of emotions. At the age of 509, no matter how much you helped, Fang Meng still succumbed to her illness. You stood before her grave in contemplation, standing for months as your hair turned from black to white. Suddenly, you felt a faint energy emanating from Fang Meng's grave, moving towards the distance. Believing this related to her death, you decided to investigate. Before leaving, you engraved wife of Yang Xian on her tombstone. Seeing this, Guan suddenly felt ashamed. Had he originally agreed to marry Fang Meng, would the outcome have been different? The reminder for reincarnation continued. The mysterious energy moved slowly, and along the way, Yang Xian avenged evil and promoted good. His reputation as a virtuous swordman began to spread. He also gradually realized that the people of the world were suffering under the oppression of the dynasty, while the immortal cultivation sects sat idly on their pedestals, not helping the people in misery, but only extracting benefits from the secular world. Thus, Yang Xian continued his charitable journey. Though his enemies grew more numerous, his mastery of the Sword Dao was unmatched and unstoppable. Years later, following the mysterious force, he reached the outskirts of the imperial city, discovering bodies of commoners and cultivators piled up outside the city walls, discarded haphazardly into mountains of corpses, a horrifying sight. Seeing that the energy had entered the imperial palace, Yang Xian faced another moment of decision. As the imperial city was closed for a ritual, forbidding entry, Guan chose to forcefully enter. This was not a moment in Yang Xian's life to shrink back. The reminder continued. Forced entry into the imperial city put Yang Xian in a difficult position, but wielding the heavens and the earth as his sword, he managed to enter the palace unharmed. He discovered the source of that energy, the national master of the dynasty, who devoured others' life energy with a miracle skill, including that of Feng Meng, whom he had met briefly. This life energy was then pumped into the emperor to prolong his longevity. Yang Xian slew the national master, avenging countless victims, but discovered that the emperor was even more terrifying. A heart-stopping battle erupted. In the end, with no one to aid him, Yang Xian killed the emperor, sustaining severe injuries himself. As he departed, the city's populace knelt to thank him. A young girl asked his name, and he did not hide it, choosing to bear the greatest hatred for this matter. Murderer of the emperor, Yang Xian. The following year, Yang Pingan returned to a small island in the mountains to recover and continue his understanding of the sword Dao. But every few years, people would seek his help, and if their suffering was indeed irredeemable, he would intervene. Time reached Yang Xian's 1000th year, and Guan still could not discern Yang Xian's realm, as the prompts did not specify. However, between the lines, it appeared that Yang Xian had reached the immortal path realm. Yang Xian's opportunities were not many, far less than other reincarnation bodies, and he had never resorted to usurping others' lifespan. His understanding of the Tao came entirely from his own revelations of nature. Guan felt an even stronger sense of enlightenment from him. Of course, his greatest asset was still his talent for combat, as if born solely for warfare. At the age of 1234, a cultivator came to your mountain island, claiming to be a disciple of the sword god, delivering an invitation. Opening the letter, you discovered that the sword god turned out to be your disciple, Yang Pingan, who was about to become the sword master of the heavenly sword sanctuary, and was inviting you to a festival. Do you choose to go? What's the point in going? After so many years of not coming back to see him, now that he is flourishing, he wants to show off his power? Guan directly refused on behalf of Yang Xian. After Yang Xian refused, the cultivator had no choice but to leave. Afterward, another long period of cultivation years ensued. Although there were hardships, Yang Xian always managed to handle them with ease. More and more place names and power names appeared in the hints, which also indicated that Yang Xian's fame was constantly rising. During this period, there were also women who admired Yang Xian, all of whom were refused by Guan. 5,000 years later, someone came to visit Yang Xian, pronouncing his current title, Sword Saint. This title not only praised his strength but also celebrated his deeds and spirit. No matter how high his cultivation level, Yang Xian preserved his original intentions. When those in suffering sought him out, he would help without asking for anything in return. He had slain a great demon that shocked the world, exposed the evil plans of a reputable sect, and even stopped the demon path from massacring the people of the dynasty. His deeds were widely known and had become legendary. At the age of 9,999, after meditating for 10 years, you finally attained enlightenment, transformed your golden core into a primordial elixir, and achieved the carefree Taoist skill. Wow! A carefree primordial immortal, not even 1,000 years old? What kind of talent is this? Yang Xian didn't possess vast immortal cultivation resources, and didn't even have a great power often giving him guidance. Yet he cultivated so quickly? After becoming a carefree primordial immortal, Yang Xian could do even more. He even came into contact with the greatest evil of the Dahong realm, the Hongdao heaven. This was the strongest force in the Dahong realm, located above heaven and earth, like an immortal overseeing all living beings. They took mortal spirits as food, indiscriminately plundered the Dao level of cultivators, all while remaining excellently concealed. Even if someone knew, Those with knowledge dared not speak out. Yang Xian was approached by a cultivator, whose family had been slaughtered by the Dahongdao Heaven for help. Thus he learned of their heinous acts. Although Dahongdao Heaven possessed a power surpassing the 9 heavens of the immortal path, and he could not shake them, he still chose to help the seeker of revenge, and executed the carefree primordial immortal of Dahongdao Heaven. Decades later, the Dahongdao Heaven sent people to recruit him. Knowing his character, Guan helped him decline the invitation from the Dahongdao Heaven. After that, great cultivators occasionally attacked Yang Xian. He repelled them one by one, until he finally faced suppression by a mysterious great power. Due to the vast difference in cultivation levels, Yang Xian was struck into the mountains by a single hand of his opponent. At the critical moment, a sword light cut through heaven and earth and saved Yang Xian. It was none other than his first mentor, the sword ancestor of 10,000 swords. The sword ancestor of 10,000 swords rescued Yang Xian and took him out of the Dahong realm to hide in a secluded minor heaven and earth. The sword ancestor of 10,000 swords warned Yang Xian never to oppose the Dahongdao Heaven again, as he could not protect Yang Xian if he truly angered the Dahongdao Heaven. Faced with the choice, Guan decided to endure in silence for the time being. Once Yang Xian's injuries healed, the sword ancestor of 10,000 swords began to instruct him in cultivation, and after 10 years of personal teaching, the sword ancestor left. Yang Xian resumed his cultivation and leveling up. He no longer sought to rescue individuals from suffering. He wanted to help all the living beings of the Dahong realm. This cultivation lasted tens of thousands of years. At the age of 70,000, Yang Xian reached the free immortal realm of the 9 heavens of the immortal path. Chapter 436. Achieving Sword Dao Saint Ancestor, a free immortal of 70,000 years, achieved his realm through meditation and cultivation. Impressive indeed. Guan was even more excited about Yang Xian's future, wondering if he could surpass the free immortal realm and overcome the death tribulation that awaited according to past experiences. After reaching the free immortal realm, Yang Xian returned to the Dahong realm. Along his journey, he met several cultivators from the Dahong realm and learned about the situation there. For thousands of years, every millennium, the Dahongdao Heaven would cleanse a region with blood. There were less than 100 regions in the Dahong realm, and now, its cultivators were wary of the Dahongdao Heaven and started to establish their dojos in outer heaven. After parting ways with those cultivators, Yang Xian returned to the Dahong realm alone. He first visited his birthplace, the Ziwei Immortal Mansion, only to find it annihilated by the Dahongdao Heaven long ago. The once familiar land was desolate, with just a few broken walls remaining of the Immortal Mansion. Hatred for all living beings combined with personal vengeance. Even Guan was concerned for the Dahongdao Heaven, questioning whether Yang Xian would embark on a slaughter. Although the Dahongdao Heaven had beings that transcended the 9 heavens of Immortal Path, Yang Xian also had the ability to evolve his lifespan, yet he chose not to use it. The following year, Yang Xian went to the site of the former Blood Deer City. He could no longer find Feng Ming's bones, and the city had vanished over time, leaving no trace behind, as though that memory was a figment of his imagination. Yang Xian decided to draw his sword against the Dahongdao Heaven. 2 years later, Yang Xian descended upon the Hongtian realm of the Dahongdao Heaven, intending to destroy its chi fortune and dissolve it. For this, he faced an ambush by the Dahongdao Heaven. During the fierce battle, Yang Xian continuously improved his Sword Dao achievement, making Guan suspect that he had used his lifespan evolution ability. The free immortals of the Dahongdao Heaven were alarmed. 10 free immortals besieged Yang Xian, but he held his ground, wielding the world's essence as his sword, casting a brilliance that shook the ancient and modern world, even harnessing the power of the Sword Dao River. The Sword Dao River, like the River of Destiny and the River of Time, was a manifestation of the Dao. Mortal spirits could not fathom it. It represented the condensed power of the Sword Dao. Boosted by the Sword Dao River, Yang Xian eliminated the physical bodies of the 10 free immortals in one strike, forcing their divine souls to flee in disarray. Just as Yang Xian was about to destroy the foundation of the Dahongdao Heaven, An ancient being from it descended, a being who surpassed the free immortals, leaving Yang Xian to fend off the attacks as best as he could. When Yang Xian was nearly overwhelmed, the Sword Saint ancestor arrived to aid him and ultimately fell. Yang Xian, in utter fury, awakened his sword heart to a divine level, making heaven and earth tremble. Guan, looking at the prompt before him, could already imagine how dire the situation had been. A battle of free immortals against a Taoist hidden immortal. Without the protection of the Sword Dao River, Yang Xian, no matter how strong, would have met his demise. But this time was different from the past. Yang Xian had an ally. After tens of thousands of years, his disciple Yang Pingon appeared to help. Remarkably, Yang Pingon had also become a free immortal. Together, teacher and student united in their Sword Dao, critically wounded the old ancestor of the Dahong Dao heaven, and forced him to flee beyond the heavens. In the end, Yang Xian and Yang Pingon together destroyed the foundation of the Dahong Dao heaven. The heavenly Dao sensed their action, and grand heavenly Dao merit fell upon them. Their cultivation levels skyrocketed, and they both condensed Tao fruits. Taoist hidden immortal. A Taoist hidden immortal of less than 100,000 years, and moreover, a teacher and student duo. Guan was deeply moved. If he had not taken Yang Pingon as his disciple back then, Yang Xian would likely have died at the hands of the Dahong Dao heaven. The chi fortune of the Dahong Dao heaven dissipated. Its followers scattered and fled. The news spread far and wide. The names of the Sword Saint and Sword God resonated across the world, becoming legends of the Dahong realm. Afterward, Yang Xian chose to leave the Dahong realm. Yang Pingon declared his intention to create a new world order, pledging to protect all living beings personally. Yang Xian gave him a deep, meaningful look, then set out to roam the cosmos beyond the heavens alone. Yang Xian arrived at a fragmented world beyond the heavens to engage in path enlightenment. His battle with the Dahong Dao heaven had given him much insight. Guan saw multiple prompts of him comprehending the Karma Dao, Chi Fortune Dao, Fate Dao, and Creation Dao. At the age of 100,034, a mysterious figure invaded your dojo, claiming to be the Black Profound Emperor and challenging you to a combat. Do you choose to accept? Black Profound Emperor. Guan's spirits lifted at the sight of these three words. However, he was unsure whether Yang Xian's time was in the past or future, thus unable to judge the Black Profound Emperor's cultivation level. For now, better refuse. I'll take care of him myself later. Such were Guan's thoughts. You choose to refuse the Black Profound Emperor's request for a combat. However, he unexpectedly made a move. You countered with a single sword strike, annihilating the Black Profound Emperor's physical body. His divine soul manifested in shock and fear, leaving behind a harsh threat before escaping with an Xian Miao method beyond your pursuit, leaving you sinking into contemplation, watching the direction he fled. 1. Victory with a single strike. Guan was filled with surprise and delight. Yang Xian was more formidable than Lu Han, Xiao Xingtian, and Chu Lu. However, it was regrettable that the Black Profound Emperor had escaped from this life. It was clear that the Black Profound Emperor had been relentlessly pursuing his reincarnation. Why was that so? What grievance did they have that warranted the Black Profound Emperor to persistently hunt down his reincarnation body? Guan couldn't figure out why, but he began to look forward to Yang Xian encountering the Black Profound Emperor again. After surviving the attack of the Black Profound Emperor, surely Yang Xian should be able to reach an even higher realm? After the Black Profound Emperor fled, Yang Xian reflected on the path enlightenment for 1,000 years, and then he ventured deep into the cosmos, entering the silent destruction domain, and made the acquaintance of people whose mere titles were extraordinary. There were still female cultivators at the Tao fruit realm who wished to become his Taoist friend, and Guan still helped him refuse. At 300,000 years old, Yang Xian achieved the status of Xian Yuan free immortal. He continued to uphold the chivalrous spirit of relieving suffering in the cosmos, spreading his name even further, and he gained a new title, Sword Dao Saint Ancestor. At 332-71-34 years old, while you were teaching Sword Dao to the juniors of various dojos in the universe, the Black Profound Emperor suddenly attacked, wishing to annihilate your entire dojo. You used the stars as your sword, with the sword intent of billions of stars converging into a sword Dao holy net that enveloped the Black Profound Emperor and fiercely vanquished him. However, you did not receive a prompt about seizing lifespan. Hence you concluded the Black Profound Emperor was still alive. This bastard was really hard to kill. Guan began to grind his teeth. The prompt continued. After 350,000 years, Yang Xian wanted to see just how vast the universe was and continued his travels. In the end he arrived at the boundary gate. Guan inwardly cursed his luck, but had no choice in the matter. At 350,008 years old, upon arriving at the boundary gate, as you were immersed in the profound Tao of the boundary gate, a figure stepped out from within the gate and attacked you, causing your physical body to perish. Your sword intent barely protected your divine soul, but the assailant struck again, annihilating your divine soul. You died at the hands of the heavenly spirit god. Reincarnation cycle has ended. Guan's face darkened. He knew it would be this way. Previously, the Black Profound Emperor was an insurmountable barrier he had finally overcome, and now the heavenly spirit god had become his new obstacle. How foolish, Yang Xian. Why did you have to be curious? If you hadn't gone, wouldn't you have avoided death? Guan vanished into thin air from the chair and arrived in the midst of the cosmos, settling on a meteorite. He activated the lifespan barrier and then received Yang Xian's life memories. Feeling Yang Xian's life truly was even more poignant. During his life, he had never used lifespan evolution, and although he could not see Yang Xian's prompts directly, Yang Xian's sword Dao and cultivation level didn't skyrocket within a single ancient hour, except for the time he received the heavenly Dao merit. Moreover, throughout his life, Yang Xian had slain fewer than 100 living beings. What a terrifying will! The death of Feng Meng grieved Yang Xian deeply, and Guan felt the same sorrow. The obliteration of the purple micro-immortal mansion and the fall of the Wan Sword immortal ancestor also caused Guan distress, but did not dampen his spirits. Guan focused on understanding Yang Xian's two encounters with the Black Profound Emperor. The Black Profound Emperor was very mysterious, each appearance shrouded in black mist around his body, preventing any glimpse of his true face. From the battles, it was evident that the Black Profound Emperor was no match for Yang Xian. But Yang Xian was no match for the heavenly spirit god either. It's worth noting that, moments before his death, Yang Xian left behind some items, sparking some expectation within Guan. He wondered if he would ever come into contact with those remnants. Chapter 437. Holy Heart Sword Dao. The change in Guan after inheriting the memories of Yang Xian. Guan had received Yang Xian's sword Dao inheritance, which was the essence of his life's cultivation. Holy Heart Sword Dao. This sword Dao uses the heart as its foundation. Whatever the heart conceives can be transformed into one's own sword. Flowers, grass, trees, and woods can become swords, mountains, rivers, seas can become swords, all living beings can become swords, the sun, the moon, and the stars can become swords. Yang Xian even wanted to turn the 3,000 Great Dao into his swords, but his sword Dao had not yet truly reached the level of the Great Dao, so it was only a conceptual idea for now. By the time Guan had fully accepted Yang Xian's memories, he opened his eyes, and a day had gone by. It seemed like only a day, but he had experienced a reincarnation. Those memories were so intense that they felt as if he had lived them firsthand. He was Yang Xian, but he was not entirely Yang Xian. To put it precisely, Yang Xian was just a part of him, Guan, and this feeling was very mystical. Yang Xian brought Guan not only the Holy Heart Sword Dao, but also a profound understanding of the many Great Dao. Even Guan was amazed by Yang Xian's perceptiveness. Without utilizing the evolution of lifespan, Yang Xian's understanding of the Great Dao was deep, stronger than other reincarnation bodies. Guan checked the lifespan consumed by the lifespan barrier, which wasn't too much, stood up, and in one step, returned to the hidden spirit palace. Deep sea dragon carp was cultivating. Upon hearing footsteps, he opened his eyes, saw Guan return, and was pleasantly surprised, promptly rising to ask, "Master, why have you returned?" Guan looked at him and said, "Didn't you want some combat techniques? How about I pass on a set of swordsmanship to you? Of course, thank you, master. Deep-sea dragon carp immediately thanked Guin and excitedly approached him, full of expectation. Guin didn't say much and began to impart the swordsmanship to him, guiding him to practice the Holy Heart Sword Dao from some simple techniques. Deep-sea dragon carp felt a change in Guin's aura, but he couldn't quite pinpoint what had changed, instead feeling an even greater respect for Guin. This was the influence of Yang Xian's memories on Guin. Yang Xian, often referred to as the Sword Dao Saint ancestor, who regularly lectured, couldn't hide the refined dignity about him, and it had already begun to affect Guin. Integrating reincarnation memories inevitably affected Guin to some extent. An ancient hour later, Guin returned to the Third Medicine Valley and, after stepping off the transmission array platform, was greeted by disciples. Do you feel any changes in our teacher? You all noticed too? Indeed, there is a change. Has the old man made another breakthrough? Our teacher's understanding of the Tao is beyond our imagination. Remember who's backing him. The disciples watched Guin's retreating figure, whispering among themselves. Some even deliberately flattered him, guessing he could overhear. When Guin arrived in front of the pavilion, Blood Prison Great Saint was also startled by the change in his aura. Had his master's cultivation level improved? He admired Guin, and the stronger Guin became, the happier he was, because he had decided to follow Guin for life. It doesn't necessarily have to be a millennium, be prepared. Guin stopped and said that to Blood Prison Great Saint. Upon hearing this, Blood Prison Great Saint was taken aback, his bovine fur fluttering as if blood flame was burning. Guin continued upstairs, returned to his room, sat at his desk, took out paper and ink, and began writing down the sword techniques and cultivation techniques from Yang Xian's memories. He wasn't afraid of forgetting them. He just wanted to write them down to spread fortune in the future. He could even create a pavilion in the future dedicated to these secret books, not for profit but to display. Cough cough. To show off. Half an ancient hour later, there was a knock on the door. Guin responded, and an Xian pushed the door open and entered. She closed the door behind her, then came to the desk, not saying anything but simply observed Guin. Guin did not stop writing, and without lifting his head he asked, "Is something the matter?" An Xian giggled. "I heard that master's temperament has undergone some changes, and everyone is speculating that you've had a breakthrough, so I came to see for myself." "Indeed, you've changed, seeming even more like a great power than before." Guin smiled but did not respond. Suddenly, he thought of Yang Xian's experiences and asked, "Do you ever harbor affection?" An Xian paused, puzzled. She asked, "Harbor what affection? There is no one in Medicine Valley who could stir mundane desires in me, and I will never fall into a calamity of emotions in my life. My senior brother once told me that his biggest regret was getting emotionally involved with someone, which hindered his progress, yet it would pain him to abandon it. I will never allow myself to fall into that situation." And Shang Tian and the later generations of the Yin family were still harboring grievances against An Hao, making an Xian even less inclined to marry and have children. Moreover, she was cultivating immortality and would not be swayed by the instincts of flesh and blood. She was happy as she was and truly did not crave love. Guin looked up at her and seeing that she was not just giving lip service, he smiled. "Is that so? Affection is not as simple as you think. When fate arrives, you might forget your words today." An Xian tilted her chin defiantly. "I won't forget. Master, you aren't trying to send me away, are you? How could that be?" "I've just been reading a book these past 2 days and felt some emotions about the love story within," Guin explained while once again feeling that complex emotion well up within him. Yang Xian's biggest regret in life was rejecting Feng Meng. He had never had a woman because the memory of Feng Meng's feelings for him was satisfaction enough. Hearing this, an Xian breathed a sigh of relief and reminded him, "Master, you should read fewer miscellaneous and idle books." Guin couldn't help but glare at her. "Get out, get out, get out. You have no respect for your elders." An Xian grinned triumphantly, bowed and then left. Guin continued writing the secret book as the sun outside the window gradually set. Time kept flowing by. 3 years later, All who knew Guan had grown accustomed to the changes in his temperament. Through integrating the Holy Heart Sword Tao, his sword intent had also improved, making swordsmanship once again his strongest technique. On this day, Guan stood on the cliffs at the edge of the third Medicine Valley, gazing up at the sky. He saw in the depths of the universe, near the silent destruction domain, a massive city appeared, pitch black in color, as big as the sun above the great heavenly spirit land. The Annihilation God Emperor was hiding within that black city. Holy courts, immortal dynasties, Xianyu Divine Dynasty, and the Sky Demon Great Sect from the great heavenly spirit land had all sent people to investigate, but anyone who came close to Black City would turn to stone. Looking around, the void was suspended with hundreds of stone statues, the strongest among them reaching the Tao Void mysterious immortal realm, which was a pity. What exactly are you planning to use to attract Longqing? Guan wondered to himself, noting that the Annihilation God Emperor was shrouded in a causal force stronger than even the free immortal, indecipherable, surely the true body of the Annihilation God Emperor. Just then, a figure descended from the sky and landed beside Guan. It was Wu Ju. In recent years, Wu Ju had just broken through to the Mahayana realm, making a name for himself in the Supreme Sect, and had drunk day and night with Guan. Guan looked at him and smiled, asking, "What brings you here?" Wu Ju with excitement said, "I have news about Hao. He has now attained nirvana, and has arranged a time for a decisive battle at sea. The Supreme Sect plans to send a group of cultivators to the Array platform to support him, and I will go too." Hao. This was the most talented genius in the history of the Supreme Sect, still a legend to this day, constantly spoken of by many disciples. Guan pretended to be surprised, raising his eyebrows. He's advanced so quickly? Is his opponent formidable? The opponent is a loose immortal. He's challenging a loose immortal beyond his realm, so this has caused quite a stir overseas. Your disciple in Xian has a good relationship with him. Do you want me to pass on a message? Wu Ju said with a smile, unable to wait to watch the battle. After a moment's thought, Guan said, "Never mind, don't tell her, so she doesn't worry." "That makes sense," Wu Ju nodded and continued. "You know just how powerful is Hao now. He dares to challenge a loose immortal at the Nirvana realm. It's said that it gets increasingly difficult to surpass others in the higher realms of the immortal path. And even within the same realm, defeating one another is as hard as reaching the heavens." Hao was younger than Wu Ju, who had just reached the Mahayana realm. Yet Hao was already challenging loose immortals. How could he not admire Hao? For a long time, he had been the #1 talent of the Supreme Sect, but both he and everyone in the sect felt he was not the strongest talent in the sect's history, because someone else was firmly holding that position. Guan pointed to his own face, feigning astonishment. "You're asking me?" Wu Ju laughed. "Aren't you the self-proclaimed sword venerable Fudao? After all, Hao is your disciple. Do you want me to tell him about this?" Guan gave him a sidelong glance. "You don't believe me anyway. Say what you want. I'm not afraid." Wu Ju got excited. "Since you're not afraid, I'll tell him. I'm looking forward to the scene when you two meet." Chapter 438. The Hong Sword Heaven. Wu Ju argued with Guan for a while before leaving in a hurry. Today, the Supreme Sect had just received news, and because the journey was long, he had to leave immediately. The Hall of Elders of the Supreme Sect was also anticipating Hao's strength, so the arrangements were made urgently. In the following 3 days, the news of Hao challenging a loose immortal spread to the Third Medicine Valley, sparking discussions among the disciples. As Hao's junior sister, Xian naturally received a lot of attention. Guan went downstairs and looked afar, seeing Xian surrounded by dozens of female disciples chirping incessantly, their voices merging into a noisy chorus. He had just descended the stairs when Ji Xiaoyu stepped out of the door. Guan initially thought she was looking for him, but she merely glanced at him before leaping up and swiftly flying out of the Third Medicine Valley. Guan subconsciously deduced Ji Xiaoyu's fate, and knowing what she was about to do next, he felt relieved. He walked towards the dojo. This time he was not interested in playing chess. Upon reaching the dojo, Guan did not step in but instead watched from the periphery as disciples and cultivators played chess. It was unusual not to see the nine-fingered divine lord, and Guan felt somewhat unaccustomed. Longqing approached from the entrance of the valley. Spotting Guan, his eyes lit up, and he hurried over. He came beside Guan and curiously asked, "Master, would you like to play chess? Shall I keep you company?" Guan glanced at him and said, "You a lousy chess player, play with me? Didn't I ask you to cultivate your Taoist heart? Why are you fooling around with the white spirit rat again?" Hearing this, Longqing scratched his head awkwardly and said, "It claimed it had found a treasure and wanted me to accompany it." Guan asked, "And then?" Longqing clenched his fists in frustration and gritted his teeth. "It tricked me into a cave and then filled the entrance with dung. It infuriated me. I must settle the score later, master. It's really despicable." Upon hearing this, Guan silently stepped back. Longqing continued to curse the white spirit rat. In the entire Third Medicine Valley, except for an Exian, everyone detested the white spirit rat. Though it was merely mischievous without truly harming anyone, and occasionally even gifted treasures to the disciples it had bullied, they could only endure its antics. Listening to Longqing's complaints, Guan just listened without comment. Although the white spirit rat was nasty to others, it was very submissive to him, often trying to please him. How could he punish it? After Longqing had finished venting, Guan suddenly asked, "I'm planning to establish a sword mountain. Where do you think it should be located?" "Sword Mountain." Longqing was stunned, his face showing surprise. Wait. The master is Sword Venerable Fudao. Could this sword mountain, like the heavenly repair platform, contain his sword intent? It must be so. Longqing immediately became excited, turning his head to select an appropriate location. The reason for creating Sword Mountain was to commemorate the ancestor of the 10,000 swords. The 10,000 sword peaks of the ancestor left a vivid memory. Hillsides covered in swords, each of exceptional grade and rank, each containing different sword intents. All the sword intents together were like the heaven and earth rules converging, forming a unique realm of their own, a realm of the sword Tao. And it was the 10,000 sword peaks that had inspired Yang Xian to create the Holy Heart Sword Tao. Longqing eagerly began to suggest ideas, and Guan had him follow to look around. Having the rare opportunity to roam the hills alone with Guan, Longqing felt delighted, and the master and disciple walked toward the edges of the Medicine Valley. Seeing this scene, a smile appeared on Enzin's face surrounded by people. Longqing was someone she had watched grow up, always considering him like her own child. Over the years, Longqing often confided in her privately. He felt that his master could help him, but insisted on tempering his Taoist heart. He suspected that his master did not like him. Naturally, an Exian hoped that there would be no rift between Guan and Longqing. Seeing Guan willing to spend time alone with Longqing, she thought Guan wanted to help Longqing. An hour later, Guan and Longqing reached the top of the mountain. Side by side, they looked out over the forests outside the Medicine Valley, a sight so magnificent it was breathtaking. "Do you still think I'm singling you out?" Guan suddenly asked, his gaze following up to the sky. The reincarnation vortex was fluctuating again. A massive amount of spiritual energy was emanating from it, clearly indicating that a force was arriving on the scene, likely with hostile intentions. Longqing quickly waved his hands, saying, "How could that be? Master, why would you single me out? If not for you bringing me back to the Medicine Valley, I would probably have been devoured by demon beasts." He had indeed once thought that his master disliked him, but after Guan had made it clear last time that he carried significant karma and revealing it would invite catastrophe, he no longer indulged in wild thoughts. Now he was more eager for Guan to teach him cultivation. Master is Sword Venerable Fudao. Even teaching him just a couple of moves is enough for him. Guan heard Longqing's words and smiled with satisfaction. "If you truly think that way, I'm relieved. Rest assured, I do look forward to nurturing you, but not now. Do you know who the Bull Demon King is?" "The Bull Demon King? He has a background." Longqing was astonished. To him, the Blood Prison Great Saint was the second most lowly existence in the Third Medicine Valley, only inferior to the White Spirit Rat. Such a guy has a background? Guan proceeded to tell the origin of the Blood Prison Great Saint, leaving Longqing dumbstruck. The blood prison great saint is this formidable? And he's an ascender from the lower realm? The most crucial thing was that the blood prison great saint was actually a human, who only turned into a bull after devouring divine beast True Blood. Longqing felt as if the sky had fallen. It was one thing for his master to hide his cultivation level, but even the bull demon king had an extraordinary background. He then thought of an ex-Xian, Yu Yingying, and other acquaintances in the valley. Could they all have backgrounds or hidden strengths? The blood prison great saint has to be a bull for 1,000 years, and he has already endured most of that time, Guan said profoundly. Longqing's expression kept changing. After pondering for a while, he took a deep breath and said, "Master, I understand now. I am indeed very lucky. I really should settle down. I've been too impatient. Your second master treats you well. When you have time, you can sit in meditation with him to calm your mind." Guan continued, his gaze shifting towards outer heaven. Along with a large number of figures flying out of the reincarnation vortex, both the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty could no longer sit idly by, and began to join forces to block them. Over the years, they had been fighting the Xianyu Divine Dynasty and the Sky Demon Great Sect. The Xianyu Divine Dynasty and the Sky Demon Great Sect had become increasingly strong, making it difficult for the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty to defeat them. This made the world situation more chaotic. Although the world is difficult, it is only the lowly beings who suffer. Yet for prodigies like Hao, it is actually a rare opportunity to rise. They could gain fame and fortune more easily. "Master, what are you looking at? Is there another movement in outer heaven?" Longqing suddenly asked curiously. Although he had never left the Taitsong continent, he knew that outer heaven was much bigger, and even had heavenly demons descending to the mortal world. With his master's ability, he must be able to see what's happening in outer heaven. Guan replied, "The reincarnation opened by Yuanshu ancestor is connected to many places similar to the great heavenly spirit land. Now forces from other lands have arrived, and the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty are blocking them. A great battle is likely to erupt." Upon hearing this, Longqing's eyes widened. There are many places like the great heavenly spirit land? Why do they have to come here? "Who knows?" Guan casually answered. His eyes showed a slight change. This mysterious force from the reincarnation vortex actually had a connection with him. More precisely, it was connected to Yang Xian, because he felt the sword intent of the Holy Heart Sword Dao in many people of this force. Although it was nowhere close to Yang Xian's, it indeed originated from the Holy Heart Sword Dao. Before Yang Xian perished, he entrusted his sword intent to the Sword Dao River. The sword intent lived on, hence anyone who practiced the Holy Heart Sword Dao would strengthen this sword intent, helping Yang Xian's sword intent to become a great Dao. Sword Dao Eternal. This was the terrifying aspect of Yang Xian. Even before he encountered the heavenly spirit god, he was considering his own death, so he left his sword intent in the Sword Dao River. His plan wasn't resurrection but to keep his sword Dao eternal, to prove he had lived. Guan couldn't help speculating if Yang Xian had guessed that he was a reincarnation body. Although he had Yang Xian's memories, he couldn't hear Yang Xian's thoughts at every moment. Guan began to deduce this force. Dahong Sword Heaven. Only one word differed from the Dahong Dao Heaven that was annihilated by Yang Xian and his disciples, but it was certain that Dahong Sword Heaven came from the Dahong realm. "Master, have you been to other worlds? Is our world considered powerful in outer heaven?" Longqing kept asking. Just then, a vast sword intent suddenly burst forth from the horizon, shooting up to the sky, startling Longqing to turn and look. He saw a sword light rising in the sky, as if wanting to split the heavens in two, rapidly stretching to the zenith. "What is that?" Longqing asked in astonishment, feeling the sword intent, which made him want to submit. Guan did not respond, but he had already seen the master of the sword intent. From the Immortal Dynasty, it was a divine thought true immortal. Chapter 439 Juluo Sword Monarch Sword cultivators of the divine thought true immortal realm were formidable, their sword intent stirring the entire world, but to harbor illusions to obstruct Dahong Sword Heaven was undeniably a fool's dream. Gu An's gaze returned to Dahong Sword Heaven, where continuous figures flew out of the reincarnation vortex, each emitting a formidable sword intent, led by two free immortals. These people's faces were unfamiliar to Guan, never having been seen in Yang Xian's memories. However, he was certain that Dahong Sword Heaven was founded by Yang Xian's disciple, Yang Pingan. Previously, Dahong Sword Heaven had not appeared, but now it did. Could it be because its followers were being taught the Holy Heart Sword Tao? Guan felt this was only part of the reason. Their imposing manner suggested they harbored designs on the great heavenly spirit land. After a brief negotiation, the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty commenced their siege on Dahong Sword Heaven, the battle fierce. Longqing could not view the fight from outer heaven, but he was lost in boundless imagination. The Supreme Sect, disturbed by the Immortal Dynasty's sword intent, debated where this sword intent originated. After watching for a while, Guan turned and left, with Longqing quickly following, inquiring about the situation in outer heaven. Guan did not conceal the facts, briefly describing the battle in outer heaven. Longqing listened excitedly, his longing for the immortal path realm intensifying. Upon returning to Medicine Valley, Longqing hurried to his room to meditate, determined to make his master proud, and to become a powerful figure who could stir the winds and clouds of the world. Guan returned to his room, untroubled by Dahong Sword Heaven bringing calamity, as this group was not potent enough to threaten the great heavenly spirit land. Sitting at his desk, Guan turned to look out the window, his thoughts drifting to distant memories. There, on that island, only Yang Pingan accompanied him, always challenging him. Thinking of it, he felt quite nostalgic. Seeing the robust chi fortune of Dahong Sword Heaven, it was clear that a lengthy time had passed since Yang Pingan had established it. How strong was Yang Pingan now? Guan looked forward to finding out, though he also felt a sense of urgency. Times had changed, and it was essential to guard against others. Guessing Yang Pingan's intentions in seeking the Holy Heart Sword Tao was challenging. Setting aside Yang Pingan, he also had to consider the Annihilation God Emperor as a hypothetical enemy, striving to grow stronger. Moreover, the depths of the universe still had the heavenly spirit god as an obstacle. What a long and heavy responsibility. With these thoughts in mind, Guan took out the latest volume of the Supreme Secret Records and began to consolidate his Taoist heart. The Supreme Secret Records were still being written but were no longer sold in the market. Only Guan had access, as a form of repayment from Shenzhen. At dawn, the waves crashed against the shore. On the cliff, streams of sword qi appeared out of nowhere, circling and coiling to form a vortex that rapidly expanded, followed by a figure stepping out from it, landing on the cliff. Bathed in sunlight, this was a man in black armor and a white cloak, his long hair tied under a white jade crown, and a treasure sword hanging at his waist. His handsome face emanated a commanding arrogance. After landing, he looked around. The sword chi vortex behind him quickly contracted. After looking around, he smiled, then raised his right hand, sword chi emerging in his palm to condense into a silver mirror, the mirror reflecting a gentle woman. Sword Lord, the fate of the great heavenly spirit land is in chaos. It is for this reason that I could help you infiltrate it, but this also implies unpredictable dangers. You must be very careful. The woman in the mirror spoke, her face filled with worry. The man with the mirror hailed from Dahong Sword Heaven, revered as Ju Luo Sword Monarch. Hearing the woman's words, Ju Luo Sword Monarch responded dismissively. The great heavenly spirit land is not what it used to be. After that great battle, it's just a fragment of the great heavenly spirit land now. No one can threaten me, rest assured. The woman in the mirror frowned, then asked, Can you tell me now why you want to infiltrate the great heavenly spirit land? Ju Luo Sword Monarch looked into the distance and said, The Holy Heart Sword Tao has reappeared. Those above wish to find the reincarnation or inheritor of the Sword Tao Saint Ancestor to serve him, but I disagree. I will defeat him and prove that Dahong Sword Heaven does not need to pursue the Holy Heart Sword Tao. I will create an even stronger Sword Tao. Upon hearing this, the woman in the mirror's expression drastically changed, just about to speak when Ju Luo Sword Monarch crushed the silver mirror, dissipating it into sword chi. He then identified a direction, stepped forward, transforming into a streak of sword light soaring toward the end of heaven and sea, leaving behind a trail of sword chi mirages. like a mirage hanging above the vast ocean. At the same time, North Sea Mountain Guan, wearing a mask, sat on the eaves reading a book, his divine thought locked onto Ju Luo Sword Monarch. The ninth layer of the free immortal realm was intensely replete with the cause and effect of reincarnation. It was estimated that the reincarnation tribulation was about to end, only half a step away from the Tao fruit realm. When the other party descended onto the great heavenly spirit land, Guan had detected him immediately, and also heard what he had said. He didn't consider Ju Luo Sword Monarch a threat. Rather, the implications behind the words of the Sword Monarch gave him pause. Did Dahong's Sword Heaven intend to serve the inheritor of the Holy Heart Sword Dao? Guan remembered that although Yang Xian had imparted the Holy Heart Sword Dao to Yang Pingan at the time showed no surprise but instead smiled, saying his own Sword Dao was not inferior to the Holy Heart Sword Dao. At that time, Yang Xian's Holy Heart Sword Dao was merely rudimentary, nowhere near as strong as it was when contending with the heavenly spirit god. And countless years had passed since then, with the Holy Heart Sword Dao having reached unimaginable levels through the Sword Dao River. Could it be that Yang Pingan had faced setbacks in his Sword Dao and come to believe his own was inferior to the Holy Heart Sword Dao? Guan speculated about what might have transpired after Yang Xian's death, to make Dahong Sword Heaven so highly esteem the Holy Heart Sword Dao. As for Ju Luo Sword Monarch seeking to trouble him, he wasn't too concerned. What waves could a mere free immortal stir up? If he dared to act against him, Guan wouldn't hesitate due to past feelings. He would kill if necessary. He wasn't Yang Xian. He didn't confine his actions within so many strictures. In the courtyard, Sage Xian Miao, holding a secret book, looked up at Guan and anxiously said, "Mountain God, this secret book is too profound. I can't understand it at all." Back at Three Pure Ones Mountain, he had been considered a prodigy, able to grasp any Taoist sorcery with just a glance. Yet, when faced with the secret book bestowed by the mountain god, he couldn't comprehend it at all. Guan nonchalantly replied, "If it were that easy to fathom, becoming an immortal wouldn't be so difficult." Centuries had passed, and Sage Xian Miao had already achieved the mystic heart realm cultivator status. His talent was not lacking. It was just that Guan hadn't prioritized nurturing him. Upon hearing this, Sage Xian Miao could only manage an awkward smile, and continued to delve into the secret book in his hands. Boom! A deafening boom suddenly came from the sky, startling Sage Xian Miao to look up and see a huge ball of light appearing and rapidly expanding, with strong winds soon descending upon the mountains and forests. Sage Xian Miao quickly stood up, frowning deeply. With the mountain god still there, he was not panicked. Mountain god, a sword intent ascended to the heavens a few months ago, and now this bizarre phenomenon has occurred. What could be the reason? Sage Xian Miao asked, turning to Guan as the tempest tousled his long hair. Guan answered, "Obviously someone is fighting." Hearing this, Sage Xian Miao fell into silence. Though he was secluded from the world, people still passed by this place, allowing him to keep abreast of the major happenings overseas, which was currently in the midst of rare chaos. He wanted to ask the mountain god why he didn't put an end to such turbulent times, but feared it would be presumptuous. He always believed that the mountain god was a true immortal, different from those powerful cultivators and demons. But he figured that the mountain god had his own considerations. Perhaps everything had its own natural laws of evolution, and even immortals could not disrupt them. Guan stood up and tucked the book into his chest, looking down at Sage Xian Miao. "Cultivate well. These days are long, and when you are strong enough, I can let you leave the mountain to alleviate suffering." As his words fell, he vanished into thin air from the eaves. Sage Xian Miao, rather than being ecstatic, looked down at the secret book in his hands, his eyes revealing a glimmer of hope. Above the boundless mountains and rivers, dust swirled as Inhao stood proudly in the air. His knight's robe fluttered wildly. He looked downward, with 9 bright suns floating behind him tracing circular paths, the firelight illuminating his form, making him look like a deity. From all directions, cultivators and demons watched the battle. They stood outside the formation. Each gazed towards Inhao filled with disbelief. Those from the supreme sect watched with surging emotions, excited beyond measure. Wu Ju watched Inhao from afar, his eyes unable to hide his stunned expression as he subconsciously looked at his own right fist. And how could overpower a loose immortal? But could his fist defeat a Nirvana realm cultivator? At this moment, he truly felt the vast disparity between himself and how, as if it were the difference between an immortal and a mortal. Chapter 440 The Origin of Sword Venerable Fudao, it seems I have one. And Hao's voice resonated between heaven and earth, silencing all the noise, allowing sects from all directions to feel his pride. A Nirvana victor over a loose immortal, such a record was a marvel and shock throughout ancient and modern times. Looking at the peerless Hao, Wu Ju felt that he still shouldn't test him. If Hao learned that Guan was impersonating his master, Guan would probably be in big trouble. Such a domineering divine flame, the flame primordial treasure body, is truly powerful. How do I feel that he is even stronger than the treasure body? Our vast energy Taoist sect also has geniuses with treasure bodies, but none as dominant as him. His divine skills just now were no small matter. He could actually mobilize the heaven and earth rules, which is also why he was able to defeat the loose immortal. No wonder the immortal dynasty could recruit him. Such talent truly surpasses the immortal spirit. Cultivators from all sects talked amongst themselves, but Hao did not pay attention. He raised his right hand, threw an elixir, and it plummeted into the rolling dust below. Immediately after, he turned and flew in a certain direction. Great cultivators, led by the Supreme Sect, immediately ordered a pursuit of Hao. Wu Ju, having no time to ponder, hurriedly caught up with the group. Half an hour later, in the mountains and fields, Hao and the high-ranking members of the Supreme Sect stood beside a stream, talking and laughing heartily, while Wu Ju stood not far away, envying the scene before him. Without Hao, he would be the one everyone looked up to, the future of the Supreme Sect. But with Hao present, he was no different from the other ordinary disciples. No one paid him any attention anymore. Vice Sect leader Jihantian looked at Hao and said with a smile, "We are most comforted by your achievement today. You carry the hope for the rise of the Supreme Sect. Even when you're away, the disciples in the sect will inquire about your whereabouts. You have become the hope that the juniors chase." Hearing this, Hao smiled even more, and faced with such words, he chose to be humble. He had quite a fondness for the Supreme Sect. As in the early stage of his immortal cultivation life, the Supreme Sect had given him considerable help. Most importantly, his master and junior sister were in the Supreme Sect, and just by that fact alone, it was impossible for him to leave the Supreme Sect. Just as they were exchanging pleasantries, an immense sword intent descended, making everyone feel as if their throats were being choked, cutting off all speech. Hao looked up, his eyebrows furrowed, a wariness apparent in his eyes. A whooshing sound descended from the sky. Clang! A sword fell from the sky, landing in front of Hao. Stones shattered and flew off, and the cultivators from the Supreme Sect retreated in shock, while Hao remained as steady as Mount Tai, unmoved. The sword that was planted in the ground trembled non-stop, the blade vibrating to form afterimages. Before the cultivators of the Supreme Sect could speak, a figure descended from the sky, landing precisely on the hilt of the sword. It was Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Hao looked up at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch before him, his eyes filled with confusion but no fear. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch ignored everyone else, his gaze fixed on Hao, burning with intensity as if he were looking at a rare treasure. "Who are you? What do you want?" The highest cultivation level elder of the Supreme Sect asked in a deep voice, clutching the Dharma treasure in his hand, clearly very nervous. Just one glance at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was enough for everyone present to realize that they were no match for him. "Boy, what's your name?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch stared at Hao and coldly asked, the breeze blowing his robe as he stood on the hilt, emanating an overwhelming pressure. Hao responded, "Hao, do you have a matter to attend to, Taoist friend?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's mouth curved upwards. "I am Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Your life grid is quite decent. No matter which part of the great heaven and earth you are in, you will rise. Serve me, and I can help you grow faster and raise your limits." Upon hearing this, Hao wasn't surprised. On his journey, too many people had already said such things to him. Hao remained composed. Thank you for your kindness, Taoist friend. I have a master, a sect, and a power I serve. I cannot pledge allegiance to you. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch narrowed his eyes. Do you know how high my cultivation level is? And Hao shook his head slightly while the others were extremely nervous, sensing that the situation was far from over. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch raised his right hand, and sword qi surged from his palm. Even though it was just a thread, the implied sword intent left everyone feeling cold. I am a free immortal, which is what you call the 9th level of the immortal path. The strongest of your great heaven and earth, the Shangtian, is also a free immortal, just stepping into the reincarnation tribulation. While I have reached the end of the reincarnation tribulation, just one step away from breaking through to a higher realm. At that time, with just a thought, I could obliterate the entire great heavenly spirit land. While declaring this, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch wore a defiant smile. He seemed eager to see Hao's reaction upon knowing his power, and Hao's expression indeed changed unnaturally. He knew of the free immortal, that was the realm of the Yangxian Emperor, but from Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's words, the Yangxian Emperor had only entered the threshold of the free immortal realm, whereas Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had reached the pinnacle of the free immortal realm. The cultivators from Supreme Sect were all showing expressions of disbelief. How could they have come across a being more powerful than Xingtian? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's arrogance was overflowing, making people feel that he wasn't spouting empty words. What about it? Will you take back what you said just now? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch stared at Hao with a mocking smile. Hao replied, Senior is indeed formidable, but if I were to serve you just because you are stronger, and then tomorrow I meet someone stronger than you, wouldn't I have to betray you too? Addressing the other as senior was already the limit of respect Hao was willing to give. He was indeed shocked by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's cultivation level, but did not believe that Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was the strongest in the world. The strongest person could only be his teacher. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, upon hearing Hao's refusal, showed a displeased look, but he also felt that what Hao said was reasonable, and his appreciation for Hao grew stronger. Who is your teacher? If I ask him to give you to me, will you no longer refuse? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch asked. At these words, the expressions of the cultivators from Supreme Sect became strange. Although they were shocked by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's power, they also believed in their hearts that Sword Venerable Fudao was the strongest. Otherwise, how could the immortal dynasty lay aside their hatred, and why would the Holy Court come forward with flattery to win over Sword Venerable Fudao? Hao frowned. He did not believe that Zhu Luo Sword Monarch could threaten his teacher, but he feared causing trouble for his master. If you don't tell me, I can calculate it myself. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch huffed, and then started to calculate by using his fingers. He can calculate it. Hao's expression clearly changed, and the cultivators of Supreme Sect were also frightened by such means. Wu Ju had been silent, but hearing this, he suddenly grew worried for Guan. If that kid impersonates Sword Venerable Fudao, could he be found out by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and bring trouble upon himself? Thinking this, Wu Ju grew anxious. All was silent in the great heaven and earth. Everyone was watching Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's calculation. However, after more than a dozen breaths of time had passed, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's brows furrowed. Strange. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was surprised in his heart, but did not dare to show weakness. He could not calculate Hao's teacher. He did manage to calculate LV Baitian and Hao's teachers from the Star Sea congregations and Immortal Dynasty, but these people's cultivation levels were too low, and the karmic ties of teacher and student with Hao were not strong, indicating that Hao didn't acknowledge them in his heart. He could feel there was a mysterious existence behind Hao, but no matter what, he could not figure it out. What's going on? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was filled with vigilance. Was there still an existence in the great heavenly spirit land that he couldn't calculate? Even for Shangtian, who had entered the reincarnation tribulation, he could still calculate some traces left by Shangtian before his death. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's gaze flickered, looking at Hao with a somewhat odd look. Could it be that Hao's teacher was the inheritor of the Holy Heart Sword Dao, or a reincarnation of the Sword Dao Saint ancestor? The more Zhu Luo Sword Monarch thought about it, the more possible he felt it was. He had come to the great heavenly spirit land for some time now, but could not find anyone or anything related to the Holy Heart Sword Tao. He even doubted whether the Holy Heart Sword Tao had appeared in the great heavenly spirit land at all. With thoughts as swift as lightning, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch put on a smile and said, "And how? How about you take me to see your teacher? We can put aside your matters. I won't insist on them any longer." And Hao asked in confusion, "Why do you want to see my teacher?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch smiled and said, "To be honest, I come from another world, and I am here to find your teacher. Your teacher is the existence our Taoist tradition has been searching for. As long as we find him, we will acknowledge him as our leader." Another world. Everyone was shocked. So Sword Venerable Fudao had such an origin? Upon further thought, they realized Sword Venerable Fudao's mysteriousness and unfathomable strength seemed to indicate that he could only come from another world. Any other origin would seem illogical. After hearing this, and Hao furrowed his brows tighter, falling into hesitation. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's face turned solemn, while his heart stirred with excitement. "Holy Heart Sword Tao. Finally, I have found you. Do not let me down. My Sword Tao will certainly be stronger than yours." Chapter 441 10,000 Sword Mountain. In front of a mountain on the north side of the Third Medicine Valley, Guan stood shoulder to shoulder with an ex-Cyan, as they watched the disciples embed treasure swords into the mountain. This mountain bore no flora at all. It was barren, with rocks of a red hue. The mountain was not naturally formed but was constructed from special stone materials Guan had acquired. Materials often used to build array platforms and magic artifacts. An ex-Cyan turned her head to look at Guan and asked with curiosity, "Master, are you creating this sword mountain to leave a legacy?" Guan smiled and said, "You will find out later." Seeing him speak so mysteriously, an ex-Cyan grew even more curious about the sword mountain before them. Guan raised his hand, and a steel flew out, landing in front of Sword Mountain and embedding itself into the soil. He followed by waving his hand in the air, using his finger as a brush to carve characters onto the steel. An ex-Cyan focused her gaze and could feel a force from Guan's strokes, a force she could not describe with words. For some reason, she felt a sense of loneliness. 10,000 Sword Mountain. Guan avoided inscribing the full 10,000 Sword Mountain Ridge, for fear of directly impacting fate. Omitting one character seemed excessive, but it actually made a world of difference. There were many 10,000 Sword Mountain ridges, and 10,000 Sword Mountains across different lands. As soon as the 3 characters for 10,000 Sword Mountain were carved, an ex-Cyan suddenly felt that this Sword Mountain possessed a spirit. Although many disciples were still embedding swords into the mountain, it somehow felt exceptionally distinct to her. Once they are done, disciples are not to set foot here in the future. With that, Guan turned and walked away. An ex-Cyan remained standing there, continuing to admire 10,000 Sword Mountain, always sensing that the mountain hid mysteries. In the following days, 10,000 Sword Mountain became a frequent topic among the valley's disciples and visiting cultivators. The very name 10,000 Sword Mountain carried immense force, and since Valley Master Guan was associated with Sword Venerable Fudao, they couldn't help but pay close attention. The news also spread to the Supreme Sect. Since Guan had claimed he was Sword Venerable Fudao, his fame had skyrocketed, and the major families had even investigated him. Pan's true identity could no longer be concealed. Since Pan was him, it led the major families to encourage their disciples to study Investiture of the Gods, Journey to the West, and Romance of the Three Kingdoms. They felt Sword Venerable Fudao must have wanted to convey something through Pan. Even if they overthought it, being familiar with Pan's books would give them something to talk about when facing Sword Venerable Fudao in the future. It could do no harm. One day at noon, outside the Supreme Sect, and Hao, accompanied by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, emerged from the forest. He turned his head to Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and said, "I only know my master is in the Supreme Sect, but I don't know exactly who he is. If he wants to meet you, he will seek you out. Remember, do not harm the disciples within the sect." Zhu Luo Sword Monarch snorted. "As the Sword Lord of Dahong Sword Heaven, would I harm mortal spirits?" He transformed into a streak of sword light, and soared towards the supreme sect. And Hao followed to catch up but had already lost track of Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's presence. Thus, and Hao decided to first visit an ex-scion at the Third Medicine Valley. Half a column of incense later, and Hao landed on a mountain peak, from where he could oversee the entire Third Medicine Valley. Compared to many years ago, the Third Medicine Valley had become more prosperous and impressive. Each surrounding mountain was equipped with formations, and he could see the figures of valley disciples laboring and practicing. Things truly change, but people pass away. And Hao murmured to himself, his tone filled with lamentation. He suddenly felt anxious, fearing that an ex-scion was no longer there. He was about to jump down when a noise from beside him caught his attention. Glancing over, he saw a man and a mouse running toward him. He remembered that mouse. It was Guan's white spirit rat. The supreme sect had many, but he had never seen any as plump as Guan's, which is why he remembered it. Behind the white spirit rat came a strapping young man. Upon seeing the newcomer, and Hao couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This fellow looked a bit like Guan, which made him slightly bewildered. Most importantly, this youth had not a trace of spiritual power, but his physical prowess was astonishingly strong. And Hao even felt that the youth possessed the physical prowess of the Nirvana realm. And Hao became interested in Longqing. He didn't mind the white spirit rat running past him, his gaze fixed on Longqing. Suddenly, the white spirit rat stopped, turned its head to look at Hao. Its eyes filled with suspicion. It felt as if it had seen this person somewhere before. Notice taken of Hao's gaze, Longqing involuntarily slowed his steps. In the presence of others, he needed to maintain dignity, and couldn't disgrace the Third Medicine Valley. When he reached Hao, Longqing bowed with a clasped fist and said with a smile, "I am Longqing, a disciple of the Third Medicine Valley. May I know your respected name? And are you seeking entry into the Third Medicine Valley?" Nowadays, the Third Medicine Valley held a high reputation within the Supreme Sect, and even as a servant disciple, one could face anyone confidently. And Hao sized up Longqing and asked, "What is your relationship with Guan?" Hearing the direct mention of his master's name and recognizing the extraordinary demeanor, Longqing guessed that Hao's relationship with his master was not shallow. So he replied, "He is my master. Are you looking for him? He just left today and should be back by evening. Shall I lead you into the valley?" "Master? Why do I feel like you're his descendant?" And Hao chuckled. Upon hearing this, Longqing wasn't angry since many people had said the same, and he had doubted it himself. However, Guan had refuted any blood relation between them, and ultimately, Longqing attributed it to being heavily influenced by his master in manner and temperament over time. Longqing shook his head and said, "I am not, though I wish it were so." And Hao did not press further, nor did he mind the trace of melancholy in his tone. And Hao smiled and said, "Throw a punch at me. If you manage to hurt me, I will pass you divine skills that require no spiritual power to wield." "Is that really a good idea?" Longqing frowned. "Divine skills? Do you take me for just another master?" He had already learned divine skills from Shinshinzi, but in his opinion, they weren't all that impressive. And Hao raised a hand, his face challenging as he taunted, "Aren't you afraid? With such a strong physique, but too scared to strike, aren't you failing to appreciate the gift given to you by the heavens?" At these words, Longqing's temper flared. He lifted his right hand, slowly clenched it into a fist, a visible force enveloping his fist, his robe billowing and hair dancing as his aura abruptly transformed. His expression turned stern, making Hao feel he resembled Guan even more. Longqing said coldly, "If I end up crippling you, you'd better not regret it." And Hao proudly laughed. "Thinking of crippling me? Even if you trained for another 100,000 years, you couldn't." A cold glint flashed in Longqing's eyes as he suddenly stepped forward. His right fist held back while his body poised as though drawing a bow, unleashing the punch from his waist with all his bodily strength channeled into his fist. He could sense Hao's strength. Not wanting to lose face, he naturally gave it his all. His punch sounded out like a rumble of thunder, startling the Medicine Valley disciples in the distance. Whether on the mountain or in the valley, they turned their heads towards the source of the noise. Also beneath the mystic pure tree, An Exian was practicing when she opened her eyes and looked towards the sound, her brows tightly furrowed. Chapter 442. The so-called fellow disciples on the mountaintop. The strong wind spilled over, causing flowers and grass to sway like green waves. Long Qing maintained his punching stance, his face showing disbelief. How could this be? His eyes widened, a tempest of shock surged within him. Following his gaze, he saw his right fist being blocked by a single finger from An Hao. His fist, being resisted by An Hao's index finger, gave him the sensation of pushing against a mountain. No, mountains aren't this hard. An Hao's hair fluttered in the wind as he stared at Long Qing, his lips curling into a smile. Not a bad reaction, but it seems you haven't fully mastered your power, or rather, you don't really know the kind of power you possess at the moment. With a gentle push of his right index finger, Long Qing felt a force overwhelming like a mountain collapsing over him, throwing him backwards. His complexion drastically changed, and while he instinctively stabilized his body, he still staggered backward several steps before stopping. He looked at An Hao with fear in his eyes, swallowing hard before asking, "Who exactly are you?" "My name is An Hao, have you heard of me?" An Hao asked with a smile, his dominance and pride momentarily receding, now his smile seeming warm as a spring breeze. "An Hao?" Long Qing's eyes widened, excitedly asking, "Are you elder sister and Zin's senior brother?" Hearing this name, An Hao's expression turned gentler as he asked, "Is your teacher sister doing well?" He hadn't used his divine sense to probe the Third Medicine Valley, partly for fear of being rude and partly because he was somewhat nervous inside. Of course, she is the leading disciple of the Third Medicine Valley. How could she not be doing well? Long Qing, knowing An Hao's identity, suddenly felt a sense of closeness. Although an Exian was his teacher sister, she was like a mother to him in his heart, since he had been raised by an Exian, and Ying since he was young. He often heard an Exian mention An Hao, naturally forming a close and curious impression of him. Hearing this, An Hao completely relaxed and then asked Long Qing to take him to see an Exian. Long Qing was very curious about him. As the two walked towards the valley, they chatted, mostly with Long Qing asking and An Hao answering. An Hao quite liked Long Qing. He couldn't quite say why. Perhaps it was Long Qing's strong physique that sparked anticipation. "Why does your Medicine Valley have so many great cultivators?" An Hao suddenly asked. He even sensed the presence of those from the Immortal Path realm, which piqued his curiosity. Long Qing mysteriously said, "Haven't you heard? My master is Sword Venerable Fudao." Hearing this, An Hao was taken aback, asking in surprise, "You have two masters?" "No, it's my master Guan, he is Sword Venerable Fudao." Long Qing hurriedly explained, knowing what he should say and what he shouldn't. Anything publicly said by Guan, he could repeat. "Guan is Sword Venerable Fudao? How is that possible?" An Hao frowned. He couldn't forget his first encounter with Guan. Both were very young back then. How could Guan possibly be his master? His first reaction was that there must be some misunderstanding, given that no one in the Supreme Sect would dare impersonate Sword Venerable Fudao. My master admitted it himself, and Sword Venerable Fudao hasn't challenged him, so isn't he Sword Venerable Fudao? Long Qing explained. He was unaware of the relationship between An Hao and Sword Venerable Fudao. Too much time had passed, and only a few knew of their relationship. Long Qing, having spent years in the Third Medicine Valley and an Exian deliberately not mentioning it, those great cultivators had no interest in gossip, so he was also none the wiser. Admitted it himself? An Hao's brows furrowed tighter, feeling quite uneasy. What did Guan mean by this? Trying to take advantage of him? An Hao decided he needed to have a good talk with Guan, as some matters must not be carelessly touched. Half a stick of incense later, an Exian led An Hao into the house, shut the door, and asked him to have a seat. Then she began to brew tea. "Elder brother, I thought you had forgotten about me," an Exian said jokingly as she walked to the table with the teapot. An Hao, who was looking around the room, replied awkwardly, "How could I forget you? Whenever I have time, I come back to see you." An Exian laughed heartily. "You can even forget your own wife and children. Forgetting me wouldn't be strange." Guan became more embarrassed. He coughed lightly and said, "My aspiration is to travel the world. I cannot stay with them. If I maintain relations, it would only bring them trouble." An Xian did not speak of the family's encounters, reasoning that if Guan cared, he would visit on his own, and if he did not, speaking of it held no meaning. Moreover, as long as Guan remained, the family had already received his care, and they would no longer face significant troubles. Thinking of this, an Xian suddenly felt that although Guan was strong, there was still much he could learn about being a person from his master. Just like romantic attachments, the master would not decide lightly, but he would take care of those who had good relations with him. Guan didn't know what she was thinking. After expressing concern for a few moments, he asked the question he most wanted to ask. "I heard that Guan calls himself Sword Venerable Fudao? What's that about? How dare he?" An Xian heard this, widened her beautiful eyes and huffed. "What? He's not worthy. It's not that. Sword Venerable Fudao is our master." Guan grew anxious, a side of him that only showed in front of an Xian. An Xian followed saying, "He is my master too. I have two masters." "It's not the same." Guan frowned, unsure how to explain. An Xian said, "Perhaps Sword Venerable Fudao truly is him, and our original master isn't him. Has the master, as Sword Venerable Fudao, ever met you? Could it be he also received guidance from our first master? Or maybe they have a common master. That's why they both can perform the Demon Shadow divine skill." Having been with Guan for a long time, she too had become crafty, thinking of continuing to confound Guan. "So fun." Guan hesitated and said, "You mean we might actually be fellow disciples?" "Who knows, he calls himself Sword Venerable Fudao and hasn't run into trouble." An Xian shrugged. More than that, she was curious about how strong Guan was. She felt a competitive spirit rising within her now. Guan, after hearing this, pondered thoughtfully, thinking that Guan might truly be Sword Venerable Fudao, and his master hadn't clarified this matter. He felt uneasy. No way, he had to find Guan personally. If the master wasn't Sword Venerable Fudao, why wouldn't he explain? Could it be he was helping Sword Venerable Fudao pose? Could this mean that in the master's eyes, Guan was more important? Guan's thoughts were in turmoil. He hadn't felt so perturbed for a long time. Previously, no matter how tough the situation, he had never felt such anxiety because his master was his ultimate pursuit, and he was so determined to become stronger because he didn't want to disappoint his master. An Xian changed the subject, starting to ask about Guan's experiences over the years, and Guan didn't hide anything, beginning from the time he left the Star Sea congregations. Guan too wanted to impress his junior sister by sharing his legendary experiences, speaking emotionally, but unfortunately, an Xian hadn't yet learned Guan's emotional intelligence to provide timely emotional feedback to him. Time flew by quickly. As evening approached, Guan rode the Blood Prison Great Saint back to the valley leisurely. Although Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had arrived, he didn't pay much attention to it, going about his usual activities. Having spent the afternoon investigating, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had already set his sights on Sword Venerable Fudao. He would soon arrive at the Third Medicine Valley. Guan could sense a strong intent to battle hidden within Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's sword intent, an indication that Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was harboring ill intentions. He was curious to see how strong this prodigy descendant of Dahong Sword Heaven was. Upon entering the valley, Guan dismounted and walked alone towards 10,000 Sword Mountain. Simultaneously, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch appeared out of nowhere in front of the stele at 10,000 Sword Mountain. Gazing at the mountain, lost in thought. This mountain harbored a faint sword intent that was difficult to capture. Although he felt no threat, he couldn't see through this sword intent. It didn't resemble the Holy Heart Sword Dao. He had been to the Sword Dao River and knew what the Holy Heart Sword Dao was like. Some disciples passing by on the trail behind him cast surprised glances his way, but seeing he didn't step onto 10,000 Sword Mountain, they didn't come forward to stop him. From a distance, Guan spotted Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and conducted a lifespan detection on him. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, Free Immortal Realm 9 Layers 29, 769, 870/500 000 000/500 000 000. Could killing him yield 40 million years of lifespan? Guan thought to himself, his steps neither fast nor slow, leisurely as if wandering through a garden, occasionally greeting disciples he encountered along the way. Chapter 443. You dare challenge Holy Heart Sword Dao? Taoist friend, you seem unfamiliar. Is there something you need help with? Gu An's voice came from behind, interrupting Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's thoughts. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch half-turned, glancing at Guan with the corner of his eye. Looking at Guan, he felt a strange sensation in his heart. Logically, such a mortal shouldn't merit his attention. But somehow, as soon as Guan spoke, he had turned around involuntarily, drawn to him. He had only ever felt this way in the presence of those stronger than himself. While sizing up Guan, he deduced that Guan had some karma with An Hao. Though not closely connected, it indeed existed. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch asked, "Are you the valley master of this medicine valley?" Guan smiled and replied, "I am Guan. May I know your esteemed name?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch answered, "I am Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, from Dahong Sword Heaven." Dahong Sword Heaven? I have not heard of it, but it sounds grand and powerful. Certainly the force of a holy land. And it must be far from the Taitsong continent. Guan feigned surprise. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was not in the mood for probes, and directly asked, "Are you a disciple of Sword Venerable Fu Dao? Call out your master." As he spoke, he also emitted a trace of sword intent, instantly enveloping the entire Third Medicine Valley. Ji Xiaoyu appeared out of nowhere in front of Guan, staring warily at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, the Dao patterns on her forehead igniting into fierce flames. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared as well, frowning at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. An Hao, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, and Shen Xinzi also quickly appeared. Those great cultivators, who had been playing chess in the dojo, promptly arrived as well. Guan could feel that Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's sword intent was to isolate the Third Medicine Valley from the outside world. Was he intending to create a battlefield? An Hao stared at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, asking in a deep voice, "Senior, what are you trying to do?" An Xian swiftly ran over, curiously looking at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Her eyes filled only with anticipation. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch ignored An Hao, his gaze settling on Ji Xiaoyu. He squinted and said, "Yin Yang 4 Emperors, long time no see, Reincarnation Path Emperor. I didn't expect you to undergo reincarnation tribulation here." Ji Xiaoyu, with a composed expression, replied, "Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, it seems Dahong Sword Heaven has no intentions of invading the great heavenly spirit land. Are you acting alone?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch laughed. "Among the Yin Yang 4 Emperors, I only fear the 6th Tao Dust Emperor. Has his reincarnation tribulation ended?" Yin Yang 4 Emperors. Reincarnation Path Emperor. 6th Tao Dust Emperor. The surrounding cultivators listened in astonishment. These names sounded impressive. "You can go find him. He indeed mentioned you," Ji Xiaoyu coldly replied. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch shook his head with a rueful laugh, ignoring the stares of others. He said, "Enough of this. I'm here to find Sword Venerable Fu Dao and challenge him to a battle." Hearing the name Sword Venerable Fu Dao made everyone tense. Daring to challenge Sword Venerable Fu Dao, he must be extraordinary. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor couldn't help but ask, did Dahong Sword Heaven come for Sword Venerable Fu Dao? He had also witnessed the great battle outside of heaven before. Dahong Sword Heavens might had alarmed him. They managed to fight simultaneously against the Immortal Dynasty and the Holy Court, and Zhu Luo Sword Monarch hadn't even participated in that battle. Just how many free immortals did Dahong Sword Heaven possess? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch did not answer the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. Despite being only a single great realm apart, he simply looked down on the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. The scene suddenly quieted down, turning the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's face an iron blue. Guan gave a cough and said, "So it seems you want to challenge me?" At these words, everyone turned to look at him. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's expression changed. He stared intently at Guan and asked, "Are you Sword Venerable Fu Dao?" So that was it. No wonder he had such an unusual reaction. In his eyes, no matter how one looked at it, Guan seemed like a cultivator in the nascent soul realm with no trace of the immortal path realm. And Hao heard Guan's words and wanted to speak but stopped himself. He had a suspicion in his heart. Could it be that Martial Master was secretly watching, which is why Guan dared to be so reckless? He also hadn't noticed Guan concealing his cultivation level, so he didn't think Guan had the ability to fight. More and more disciples watched from a distance, not daring to get closer, only able to discuss from afar. Guan walked around Ji Xiaoyu and approached the Zhu Luo sword monarch. Ji Xiaoyu grabbed his wrist, trying to persuade him, but Guan just smiled at her and gently pulled his hand away. Well, I am. How do you want to challenge me? Guan looked at the Zhu Luo sword monarch and asked with a smile. He was giving the Zhu Luo sword monarch a chance. If he answered poorly, he would perish along with his cultivation. After all, the Hong Sword Heaven was Yang Pingan's Taoist tradition, and by seniority, the Zhu Luo sword monarch was also his disciple. As a martial master, how could he kill a fellow sect member upon meeting? The Zhu Luo sword monarch raised his right hand, condensing sword intent in his palm, resembling a thread of lightning, neither dazzling nor enormous, yet it made everyone terrified. This thread of sword intent contained extremely terrifying power, making people shudder. Ji Xiaoyu, the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, and others didn't even dare to move, feeling a terrifying sensation that any movement could lead to death. And Hao clenched his fists inside his sleeves, ready to make a move. Longqing stood at a distance on tiptoe watching. He couldn't feel the sword intent of the Zhu Luo sword monarch, but with so many people gathered, how could he not be curious? Naturally, we'll compare the sword Dao to see whose sword Dao is stronger. Show your Holy Heart sword Dao. The Zhu Luo sword monarch coldly stated. Holy Heart sword Dao. Ji Xiaoyu and the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor both drastically changed their expressions, looking at Guan in astonishment. They had heard of the great fame of the Holy Heart sword Dao, a supreme inheritance of Da Hong Sword Heaven, able to dominate across 3,000 worlds and be invincible. Guan had actually inherited the Holy Heart sword Dao? No wonder Sword Venerable Fu Dao refused to show his true self. It turns out he was a great cultivator from Da Hong Sword Heaven. In any great heaven and earth, there was no one who could silently reach the free immortal realm. Just the heavenly tribulation from divine thought true immortal to free immortal would shake the universe. How could one hide? Hearing the words of the Zhu Luo sword monarch, Guan showed a faint smile. His smile, however, appeared as a provocation in the eyes of the Zhu Luo sword monarch. Just then, Guan suddenly shifted, appearing instantly in front of the Zhu Luo sword monarch. The gust of air lifted the Zhu Luo sword monarch's cloak, and he widened his eyes. Challenged the Holy Heart sword Dao. Guan slightly raised his chin, looking at the Zhu Luo sword monarch with indifferent eyes, as if he were looking down on an ant. With his left hand, he then grabbed the Zhu Luo sword monarch's wrist. The entire process went unchallenged by the Zhu Luo sword monarch. It wasn't that he couldn't react, but he was unable to resist. With Guan holding him, the Zhu Luo sword monarch's pupils dilated, and his heart was struck with shock. Guan looked at him and slowly said, "Let's not first discuss whether I possess the Holy Heart sword Dao. To you all, what status does the Holy Heart sword Dao even have? Are you even qualified to challenge the Holy Heart sword Dao?" These words struck the Zhu Luo sword monarch like a hammer, causing his body to tremble, and cold sweat began to bead on his forehead. Everyone else could feel Guan's dominance, and what surprised them most was how the usually arrogant Zhu Luo sword monarch had suddenly become mute. And Hao was the most shocked and unable to stay composed. He knew too well how strong the Zhu Luo sword monarch was. A mere breath from him could annihilate a cultivator in the nascent soul realm. Although he hadn't felt Guan's aura now, he knew something must have happened that made the Zhu Luo sword monarch dare not retaliate. Or rather, the Zhu Luo sword monarch simply couldn't retaliate. Chapter 444 Master. I want to be the heavenly emperor under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Zhu Luo sword monarch trembled all over, unable to speak. All gazes fell on Guan's hand, which held the wrist of Zhu Luo sword monarch. At that moment, Ju Luo Sword Monarch's aura was not a match for Guan, almost as if he was about to kneel at any moment. Guan's face was so cold, and his gaze, falling into the eyes of Ju Luo Sword Monarch, was terrifying. How can this be? The thought of utter disbelief crossed the mind of Ju Luo Sword Monarch. Held by Guan, his sword intent dissipated instantly, and the mana within him was suppressed, rendering him unable to mobilize it. He was like a mortal, incapable of resistance, let alone freeing himself of Guan's grasp. Tao Fruit Realm. This person must have surpassed the free immortal realm, and reached an even higher level. Despite Ju Luo Sword Monarch's claim to have reached the end of the reincarnation tribulation, in reality, he had yet to find his breakthrough opportunity. This was also why he wanted to challenge the Holy Heart Sword Dao. He hoped to break his own limits through the swordsmanship exchange. The stronger the inheritor of the Holy Heart Sword Dao, the more he looked forward to it. Only tremendous pressure could break his shackles. Guan stared at him and asked, "Now tell me, do you still want to challenge me?" Ju Luo Sword Monarch clenched his teeth, attempting to speak, but he lacked the courage to voice his words. For him to bow his head was harder than death. Damn it! Why was the gap so vast? Ju Luo Sword Monarch harbored a secret hatred, not towards Guan, but at his own weakness. With such a vast difference in strength, his challenge to Guan seemed absurd. He despised those who were weak yet acted arrogantly, and now he was the very person he loathed the most. Ju Luo Sword Monarch was extremely frustrated. He roared inwardly, wanting his sword Dao to break free. But Guan's power was like a wall of the Tao Fruit Realm, crushing him mercilessly. No matter how furious, he couldn't shake it. For a moment, the atmosphere was tense. The pressure on everyone vanished, replaced by shock. Could it be that Guan was truly Sword Venerable Fudao? They couldn't sense how strong Guan's aura was, still seeming like he was in the nascent soul realm. However, Guan was clearly suppressing Ju Luo Sword Monarch, and Ju Luo Sword Monarch's earlier arrogance and haughtiness could not have been an act. And Hao was shocked. He looked at Guan's retreating figure with complex emotions: astonishment, delight, apprehension. Just then, Guan suddenly let go, smiling and saying, "Since you're not speaking, I'll take it you've given up the challenge. Guests should be treated well. Stay at the Third Medicine Valley for a few days." Ju Luo Sword Monarch felt the suffocating pressure lift instantly. His first instinct was to flee, but he resisted. If the other party didn't kill him, would fleeing not bring shame to the Dahong Sword Heaven? Looking at Guan's gentle smile, Ju Luo Sword Monarch didn't know how to respond and wished he could vanish into thin air. Guan turned around and beckoned to an Xian, who immediately ran over. "Accommodate this Daoist friend," said Guan, then turned and left. Ji Xiaoyu stared at Guan in a daze, once again astonished by his strength. Ju Luo Sword Monarch was stronger than her true body, and such a being was completely suppressed by Guan to the point that he couldn't even speak. How high was his cultivation level, really? Others too were shocked by Guan's cultivation level, and conceived speculations about his realm. Ju Luo Sword Monarch watched Guan's departing figure, his face flushed with humiliation. When an Xian invited him into the valley, he could only nod and follow her. Although he was suppressed by Guan, no one dared to mock him. As he walked by, the great cultivators made way, fearing they might provoke his anger. And Hao kept pace with Guan's steps without catching up immediately, maintaining a distance instead. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor stood by Ji Xiaoyu's side and pondered. Who exactly is this deity? Ji Xiaoyu did not answer him, and no one else could either. The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord was relieved that he hadn't underestimated Guan due to his cultivation level. Shen Xinzi thought even further ahead. Faced with the provocation of Ju Luo Sword Monarch, Guan had the power to kill him yet chose to give him a way out. Such magnanimity was beyond the capacity of ordinary individuals. This was the very path Shen Xinzi himself should pursue. On another side, Long Qing ran over to Guan's side, walking shoulder to shoulder with him, occasionally glancing back at Hao. He could tell Hao seemed to want to talk to Guan, and was adopting a very humble posture. "Master, what just happened?" Long Qing asked curiously. His gaze followed and fixed on Ju Luo Sword Monarch, whose presence was so powerful. Just walking down the road, he exuded an air of invincibility, as if even the heavens couldn't contain him. Guan smiled and said, "Nothing much, just chatted with someone. You can go talk to him directly, he is a senior after all. Remember not to forget your manners." Hearing Guan's words, Longqing really did want to go meet with Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. After a while, Guan went upstairs alone, and Anhao stayed at the bottom of the loft, hesitating for a moment before he also went upstairs. He had just reached the door when he heard Guan's voice. "Remember to close the door behind you." Upon hearing this, Anhao instantly felt calm. All his doubts were washed away. This was definitely his master. Suppressing his excitement, he closed the door. He strode to the table and then knelt down, kowtowing to Guan. Guan did not stop him, graciously accepting his gesture of respect. Anhao looked up at Guan and exclaimed excitedly, "Master, you've kept me in the dark for so long. No wonder you took an Xian as a disciple. You've been looking after her all along. Hasn't she known all this time?" Guan smiled and replied, "She didn't know at the beginning. She was just as excited as you when she found out. Stand up and speak." Anhao hurriedly stood up. He had too many things to tell his master. Guan invited him to sit down, and then inquired about his experiences over the years. Anhao did not dare to hide anything. He did not overly embellish his narrative, sharing both his hardships and achievements. After a long time, Guan asked, "What are your goals for the future?" Unlike an Xian, Anhao had been wandering outside for years, and his ambition only grew higher and higher, so Guan had no intention of keeping him. Taking a deep breath, Anhao said, "Master, I want to become the Heavenly Emperor, just like the Jade Emperor you've written about." Guan smiled and said, "Those two words should not be uttered carelessly because real immortals do exist. Indeed, to be besieged by immortals, real immortals are far more terrifying than mortals can imagine. If there is order, there must be a ruler, and the leader of the immortals might be known as the Heavenly Emperor." Upon hearing this, Anhao was startled and cautiously asked, "Immortal dynasty?" "They are far from it." Guan's response let Anhao breathe a sigh of relief and also filled him with surprise. If the immortal dynasty was not considered a group of immortals, how powerful were the true immortals? Guan looked at Anhao and also discerned his life grid. Life grid, the combination of fate and chi fortune, indicates that the stronger the life grid, the better the chi fortune and longer lifespan. Anhao had a continuous stretch of chi fortune, and his life seemed to have no visible end, which Guan saw for the first time in such a life grid. Indeed, the limit of 9,999 years was simply the upper limit of mortal realm, not the limit for Anhao. After reaching the Nirvana realm, Anhao's lifespan limit became 6 nines, and Guan estimated that breaking through further great realms would continue to extend it. Chapter 445. Want to become a disciple? Do you aspire to be the Heavenly Emperor because you want power and influence? Guan asked curiously. The Jade Emperor in Journey to the West wasn't described as particularly strong, at least not the strongest, and Anhao had always wanted to be the strongest. Could it be that his mindset had changed now that he was considering becoming the Heavenly Emperor? Anhao answered, "I want strength, and I want power and influence. Along the way, I've been to many places, left behind many people, but I feel that this path is not right. However, to become stronger, even if it's not right, I still have to continue on. By becoming the Heavenly Emperor, I can protect those I wish to protect and shelter all living beings from suffering." "I didn't expect you to still have such a benevolent heart," Guan remarked. Anhao's face turned red, and he said, "Master, what do you mean? Do you see me as someone ruthless, without bottom lines? After all, I have inherited the righteousness of the Supreme Sect. No matter where I go, when I encounter people in suffering, as long as I can help, I will take action." Guan smiled. He indeed had seen such behavior from Anhao, though it wasn't frequent. Compared to Yang Xian, Anhao still had a long way to go. However, Guan never had specific expectations for what Anhao should become. He imparted the technique of immortal cultivation to Anhao due to fate. As long as and Hao didn't do evil, he was loath to nitpick. Guan continued to chat with and Hao, which gave and Hao a deeper understanding of his master. It seemed no different from their previous interactions, but and Hao felt his master's vastness, like the Songhai Sea, with the ability to conquer the world yet able to recluse here, laughing and chatting with anyone. Every word Guan said seemed sincere in Hao's eyes. When Guan's image merged with the image of the master in his heart, it was both sincere and contained wisdom, as if every word from his master taught him, and held expectations for his growth. Suddenly, Hao thought of something and asked, "Is Yang Jian your direct disciple?" Guan smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, he knows I am Sword Venerable Fu Dao. I even told him he has an impressive senior brother, just didn't say it was you." Upon hearing this, Hao's face broke into a smile. He had a profound memory of Yang Jian, and they had even agreed to a duel at the Sky Ranking tournament. He had never forgotten it. Where did he go? Why haven't I seen him? Hao asked curiously. Guan recounted Yang Jian's background and current whereabouts, leaving Hao silent. The Holy King of the Holy Court. He had visited the Holy Court, witnessed the demeanor of the Holy King, and suddenly felt pressure. Yang Jian's talent had already won his approval. Coupled with the background of the Holy King, he might indeed surpass him. Guan continued, "Besides Yang Jian, I have taught others, including demons. Don't underestimate them." His tone seemed joking, but his eyes were sharp. Hao felt his fighting spirit ignited after hearing this. Full of confidence, he said, "Master, rest assured, I will always be your most outstanding disciple." Guan smiled and nodded, but his heart disagreed. If that were the case, wouldn't it mean that my teaching ability is inferior to your talent? He had to cultivate a disciple stronger than Hao. Hao thought of the Annihilation God Emperor and began to say, "Master, previously I encountered..." "Don't speak." Guan interrupted him, causing him to look puzzled. Guan continued, "Your realm is still low. When you delve into the way of cause and effect, you'll understand that even when you speak of certain beings in secret, even without naming them, merely describing their likeness and deeds can alert them. Oh, keep an eye on that existence. His help for you is casual, without any ulterior motives. You can rest assured." Longing was evident in Hao's eyes. What kind of realm must one reach to be so powerful? He adjusted his emotions and stopped thinking about the Annihilation God Emperor. Moonlight streamed through the window as the master and disciple continued their chat. The atmosphere was pleasant, with Hao occasionally standing up, using actions to describe the scene he was talking about, while Guan looked on with a smile, as if enjoying a storytelling session. Hao was excited because he could finally sit and talk with his master. Guan too was content. Watching the vigorous Hao, he thought of the resolute youth who, in order to protect his sister from the village, had boldly faced an invincible wolf demon. In the blink of an eye, over 800 years had passed. The young ones had begun to stand on their own, while many of Guan's contemporaries had passed away. Considering this, Guan was not sad. He still wore a smile on his face. The old friends had passed, but the younger generation was still there. Such was life. The moon set, and the sun rose. In the early morning, Hao stepped out the door, looking towards the vast ranks of disciples in the distance, watching them practice. His gaze drifted. Previously, he too had watched the Medicine Valley disciples' morning practice, but he had never felt quite like he did today. He realized that the movements of the Medicine Valley disciples carried a profound mystery, truly worthy of being the body-strengthening method created by his master, embodying the simplicity of the Great Path. Guan stepped out of the house, standing behind him and looking towards the distant spectacle of the practice. Over 4,000 people practicing together was stirring the spiritual energy in the valley, a magnificent sight. "Hurry up! What are you looking at?" Guan urged. Coming to his senses, Hao turned back with a smile, and then started walking down the stairs. Reaching the corner of the staircase, he turned his head toward Guan and asked, "What kind of person do you hope I will become?" Guan glanced at him and then looked up to the east, saying, "I hope you become like that proud sun, radiant and shining. Even if you fall into the lowest valleys, You always rise up, climbing to a height that all living beings find unreachable. After hearing this, and how unconsciously looked towards the rising sun on the horizon, his smile faded, his expression turning serious. Chapter 445. Want to become a disciple _2? I definitely will. And Hao said determinately, then turned his head and continued down the stairs. Guan didn't see him off. Instead, he kept looking toward the east. The morning sun rose, streaking across the sky, only to be chased down by darkness again. When the world fell into darkness, new sunlight broke through the earth's surface, illuminating all things and banishing the darkness. After daylight, Guan stepped out of his room again. He faced the blazing sun and stretched languidly. The first day after 1,000 years seems no different than the rest, Guan said with a smile, talking to himself. Today he turned 1,000 years old. In his eyes, this marked a brand new page in his life. He followed the stairs down and, just as he reached the bottom, Ji Xiaoyu walked out from inside the house. Will you intervene in Hao's conflict with the Sky Demon Great Sect? Ji Xiaoyu looked at Guan and asked. 97 years had passed since Hao left. While the world's events changed each year, Guan's life in the Third Medicine Valley remained the same, and he was content with that. Guan casually replied, Why intervene? I'm just an ordinary cultivator who loves to garden. I have no wish to get entangled in trouble. Having said that, he moved forward with his steps. Since Ji Xiaoyu had learned of his strength, she no longer behaved like a petulant girl, which actually made him find her rather dull. As Ji Xiaoyu watched him walk away, she followed up with, But as he continues like this, the Sky Demon Great Sect surely will not let him go. You will definitely save him. According to my investigation over these years, behind the Sky Demon Great Sect stands the Heavenly Demon, who is also at the peak of the free immortals. Guan stopped his steps and turned his head to look at her, asking, What if you surpass the free immortal in this life? What will you do? Ji Xiaoyu paused, then said, I am just a reincarnation body. It's impossible for me to reach the realm of my true self. With more of her memories reviving, her reluctance was fading. She was gradually becoming her true self, or rather, reverting to her original temperament. After listening, Guan appeared thoughtful, then continued on his way. Ji Xiaoyu started to ponder Guan's words. Must a reincarnation body truly not surpass the original self? Thinking it through, she didn't know how to reach a higher realm beyond the reincarnation tribulation. She had received no guidance. Ji Xiaoyu felt as though she had grasped at something, but it wasn't clear what it really was. She looked at Guan's retreating figure, feeling that somehow he was reminding her of something. Guan was also in deep thought. Within the lifespan samsara, Longzhan had once surpassed him, and he believed that a reincarnation body could possibly surpass the original self. His curiosity aroused. If his reincarnation body continued to grow, what would happen? Guan was merely curious and felt no urge to experiment. For the time being, he had no desire to open another lifespan samsara, because he was saving up his lifespan for the next breakthrough. Although no existence threatened him at the moment, he couldn't relax. He had to maintain his progression in strength, not wait for an unbeatable foe to arrive before starting to regret. With these thoughts in mind, he made his way towards 10,000 Sword Mountain. A meteor streaked across the sky, caught perfectly by his gaze. Another free immortal has descended. It seemed it wouldn't take many years for another earth-shattering war to erupt. But there had been many such wars in recent years, with high-level beings fighting outside of heaven, clearly all fearing they might shatter the great heavenly spirit land. Guan's gaze then shifted towards the depths of the cosmos. The Black City, created by the Annihilation God Emperor, was still devouring Tao's spiritual energy, and Guan could sense a faint power gathering inside it. The Annihilation God Emperor seemed to be refining some kind of supreme treasure, but it was unknown whether it was an Immortal Path supreme treasure. Was he trying to force Longqing out by using this treasure? Guan pondered curiously in his heart. He wasn't in a hurry at all. As long as the true form of the Annihilation God Emperor didn't appear, he felt no fear. For Guan, time was even more important. He made his way to Sword Mountain, where treasure swords covered the mountain, reflecting sharp sword lights under the sunlight. Stepping up the mountain, he touched every sword hilt along his path, infusing each with the sword intent of different swordsmanship. The swords he touched would instantly lose their luster, seeming to lose their spirit, but in reality, they were being nurtured by the sword intent, with the underground spiritual energy altering the essence of the swords. After a while, Guan reached the mountain peak. Looking down upon all the swords, his figure was noticed by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, who was under a distant tree. Since coming to Third Medicine Valley, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had not left. He acted properly, no longer arrogant and imposing. He wanted to understand Guan. Although Guan didn't acknowledge that he had inherited the Holy Heart Sword Dao, instinct told the Sword Monarch that Guan must be connected to it. Perhaps it was because of the relationship between the Holy Heart Sword Dao and Dahong Sword Heaven that Guan had spared him. Putting himself in Guan's shoes, the way he had previously addressed Guan was enough to warrant death 10,000 times over. It was precisely because he understood this that he acted so properly, and would occasionally give pointers to the disciples in the valley. A figure rode a sword through the air, landing beside Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. This was a man in blue attire, holding a treasure sword. He saluted Zhu Luo Sword Monarch saying, "Senior, I have learned the swordsmanship you taught me." The standoff between Guan and Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had not spread. Firstly, because the Sword Monarch had isolated Third Medicine Valley with his sword intent at the time, and secondly, since the Supreme Sect saw that Guan didn't kill Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, they thought to win him over. This was a being of the 9 heavens of the immortal path, and if they could successfully win him over, the Supreme Sect could leap to become a powerful force under heaven. The blue-attired man was Su Jie, the disciple with the strongest talent in the history of Third Medicine Valley. Su Jie had heard from LV Baitian that a powerful sword cultivator had appeared in Third Medicine Valley. He loved using swords, so he took the initiative to visit Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Considering Guan's face, the Sword Monarch gave pointers to many valley disciples. Faced with Su Jie, he was not stingy. "Just learned it then," Zhu Luo Sword Monarch said indifferently, his gaze fixed on the silhouette of Guan. Su Jie indeed had exceptional talent, but he was not the strongest he had seen, certainly not compared to how he had met before. Thus he had no intention of taking a disciple. He was now focused on becoming a disciple of Guan. How could he have the time to take on his own disciple? Su Jie followed Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's gaze and saw Guan. His feelings towards Guan were complicated. He even felt a bit defiant. He believed his own talent was strong, even comparable to Hao, but during his time in Third Medicine Valley, he didn't receive special attention from Guan. He felt overlooked. Of course, he still had fond feelings for Third Medicine Valley. Although Guan hadn't given him special treatment, he was kind to him. He didn't dislike Guan. He just wanted to prove himself to Guan. More than 90 years ago, he had witnessed Hao's strength. This was why he was so eager to seek out Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Catching up to Hao was not going to be easy. Su Jie turned back to Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, asking, "Senior, wouldn't you like to see my swordsmanship?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch replied impatiently, "Not interested." Upon hearing this, Su Jie's expression became unnatural. Suddenly, the Sword Monarch remembered the Valley disciple's assessment of Su Jie. He was the pride of Third Medicine Valley. Guan must be paying attention to him too. No, he couldn't offend Guan. He still wished to become his disciple. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch looked at Su Jie and began to scrutinize him. Chapter 446. Pure Land Under Heaven. Su Jie had been feeling quite stifled, but seeing the Zhu Luo Sword Monarch reassessing him, hope rekindled in his heart. "Do you want to learn the most superior swordsmanship?" the Zhu Luo Sword Monarch asked seriously. Upon hearing this, Su Jie quickly responded, "Of course I do. Would the senior be willing to teach me?" The Zhu Luo Sword Monarch raised his right hand, and a piece of silvery white jade appeared between his fingers. He tossed the jade to Su Jie, who caught it instinctively. "If you can comprehend the swordsmanship contained within this, I will pass on my sword Dao to you." After that, dominating the great heavenly spirit land will certainly not be difficult, the Ju Luo Sword Monarch said calmly. Upon hearing these words, Su Jie immediately bent at the waist to bow and thanked the Ju Luo Sword Monarch. The Ju Luo Sword Monarch waved his hand, indicating that Su Jie could leave. Su Jie didn't dare to linger and turned to leave. Yet he couldn't help but glance toward Guan. He wasn't foolish. The Ju Luo Sword Monarch had clearly been impatient just moments ago, but after looking at Guan his attitude changed completely, indicating that it was only because of Gu An's face that he agreed to impart his swordsmanship to Su Jie. This made Su Jie's feelings even more complex. He was very grateful to Guan and even wanted to thank him, but he felt like there was an invisible wall between himself and Guan that was very difficult to cross. Meanwhile, Guan was still standing on 10,000 Sword Mountain, deducing fates and cause and effect. He saw many people coming and going at the foot of the mountain. These were visions of the future. Inheriting the memories of Yang Xian, his understanding of the Sword Dao and fate was profound. Using the sword intent of 10,000 Sword Mountain to deduce the future, he could see the shadows of times far away. Suddenly, he spotted a figure standing still at the foot of the mountain, looking up at him. Guan slightly raised his eyebrows, focusing on the figure, his eyes revealing a hint of surprise. He deduced that this figure and 10,000 Sword Mountain had the closest connection of fate. This individual would inherit all the sword intent of 10,000 Sword Mountain, and even boost its chi fortune. He could even deduce the person's name and identity. A talent like this in the new epoch, Guan thought to himself, feeling somewhat emotional. The talent of this individual in the Sword Dao was extremely terrifying, almost like he was seeing another Yang Xian. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this individual's talent was even stronger than in Hao's. Regrettably, he wasn't born in the same epoch as in Hao. By the time he came into this world, and Hao had already become the most dazzling sun in the heavens. Guan didn't keep his focus on this future talent, continuing to deduce the future, not to probe for something, but to increase his own understanding of cause and effect and the way of destiny. He stood there the entire day. Although the disciples in the valley were curious about what he was pondering, no one dared to disturb him. No matter how Guan was viewed by the outside world, within Medicine Valley, all the disciples believed he was formidable, and many had even concluded that he was Sword Venerable Fudao. This led to more and more disciples choosing to stay in Medicine Valley after their foundation establishment, and those who became masters often returned to visit. For this reason, Guan had established several positions within Medicine Valley to help manage the disciples. And an Xian also delineated several other positions, causing Third Medicine Valley to unavoidably form a hierarchy of power, much like a mini-immortal cultivation world. The next morning, Guan rode the Blood Prison Great Saint to Tianya Valley. Over the years, Tianya Valley had expanded, providing a steady income to Gu An's lifespan. The valley also fostered many talented individuals cultivated by Li Xiandao, who had established good relations with Guan. Guan loved to mingle with the talented, and no matter what they played, they would not give up easily after losing, always coming back to challenge Guan. While Gu An's outward cultivation level was at the divinity transformation realm, the disciples of Tianya Valley all knew he was very strong. The change in demeanor and appearance enabled Guan to no longer deliberately conceal his strength, though at most he didn't appear overly strong. Currently, his undefeated record in the battles of combat at Tianya Valley made him want to laugh whenever he thought of that prince consort challenging him again. The Blood Prison Great Saint, too, was looking forward to the upcoming battle of Tianya Valley. He also wanted to see those arrogant individuals suffer setbacks. Guan, admiring the scenery along the way, said with a light laugh, "Next spring festival I will unseal you. Are you ready?" Blood Prison Great Saint didn't react with too much surprise, as he had long been prepared. In a low voice he said, "Master, I have been ready. Even if I regain my cultivation level, I will never betray you and will always follow you." He had already begun cultivating the primordial reincarnation skill, and once unsealed, his cultivation level would soar, perhaps achieving nirvana in one fell swoop. Guan laughed. "Cultivate well in the future. Your strength also represents my face." These words instantly excited Blood Prison Great Saint. He had been waiting for this. He wished to always be by Gu An's side. He had come to realize that those who left, despite their wandering, could hardly compare to those who stayed with Guan. And Hao was an exception. If Hao had stayed by Gu An's side, his achievements would have only been greater. And he felt that, in the future, there would definitely be individuals who would appear with even greater talent than Hao. Master, rest assured, I will cultivate hard. I'll first set Hao as my goal. Blood Prison Great Saint said excitedly, trembling all over. Guan said no more, letting him continue on. In the following journey, Blood Prison Great Saint felt as if he was floating, his thoughts lost in boundless imagination. Autumn arrived. At the Supreme Sex subsect, within Yi Mansion, Guan sat at a table sipping tea, watching Yilan instruct a young girl in the ways of spellcraft. The autumn breeze blew into the courtyard, making everything seem perfect. Yilan turned to Guan and asked, Senior brother, do you have anything to say? The practicing girl cast a doubtful glance at Guan. She had always been skeptical about this senior uncle. Her master said that her senior uncle was very strong, but she couldn't help feeling that he only seemed handsome rather than formidable. Guan responded with a smile. You're teaching quite well. I've nothing to say. I'm nowhere near your level. The constant emergence of geniuses from the Third Medicine Valley is widely known. Your ability to instruct disciples is incomparable to ordinary people, Yilan said, shaking her head. She was sincere. There was no need for her to flatter given the relationship she had with Guan. Guan replied, It's all due to the disciples' hard work. It doesn't have much to do with me. He wasn't interested in the disciple Yilan had recently taken on. The girl's maximum lifespan was around 3,000 years. Considered a prodigy indeed, but now a true talent was approaching the Supreme Sex subsect. Zhuxi, that ultra-talented individual with the Tai Chu swallowing yuan body. Guan had been keeping an eye on her, witnessing her crossing the ocean to reach the Taitsong continent. She came to the Taitsong continent because she had heard it was one of the few pure lands left in the world, and she wanted to cultivate in peace under the protection of Sword Venerable Fu Dao. She had previously received the Stepping Path of Ages step from Guan, and now she had made some progress being able to use it in battle. Although in Gu An's view, her Stepping Path of Ages step was rather unrefined, this divine skill was difficult to cultivate. To be able to master it and employ it in combat at less than 600 years of age, her aptitude was definitely terrifying. Hearing Gu An's words, Yilan couldn't help but pout. She could see that Guan was not interested in her disciple, Yi Qingxue. Indeed, compared with a talent like Su Jie, Yi Qingxue did indeed seem mediocre. Chapter 447 Immortal Creation. Yi Qingxue felt quite disgruntled as she listened to her master heap praise upon Guan. Despite having only met Guan a few times, she spent all day and night with her master. In her eyes, her master was strict and decisive, wielding tremendous power, the strongest woman she had ever seen. She too wanted to become a female cultivator like Yilan. It was precisely because of this that it was particularly unpleasant for her to watch Yilan ingratiate herself with Guan, but she dared not show her anger in front of her master. Yi Qingxue feels hostility towards you and wants to beat you up. Do you wish to perform a lifespan detection on her? A notification appeared before Gu An's eyes, causing him to pause. He couldn't help but glance at Yi Qingxue. Yi Qingxue was staring at Guan, but as soon as she met his gaze, she quickly turned her head away. Her face and even her ear tips flushed red as though they were about to bleed. Guan shook his head with a smile, not taking her seriously. What would be the point of taking issue with a 14-year-old child? If it wasn't murderous intent, he was too lazy to care about it. He dealt with people daily. Naturally, some would be dissatisfied with him. It didn't mean he should kill anyone who harbored dissatisfaction towards him. Yilan had no idea what Yi Qingxue was thinking. After giving her a few words of advice, she walked over to Guan, considering it was rare for Guan to visit. Yilan was preoccupied with him, even thinking that Yi Qingxue was somewhat in the way. Seeing her come over, Guan stopped paying attention to Zhuxi and focused on chatting with Yilan. An hour later, Yi Qingxue took her leave. Once her presence had faded, Yilan could no longer contain herself and pounced on Guan. Be careful about the impression you're making. What if your disciple comes back? What about it? I'm not afraid of anyone knowing. You're a law enforcement elder now. You should be mindful of the impact. If it means losing my position as a law enforcement elder, then so be it. I miss you so much, elder brother. You can't touch there. Elder brother, you smell so good. The autumn wind swept away the dead leaves from the trees. The leaves, once they fell to the ground, seemed unwilling to give up and fluttered in the air, struggling for a long time before finally landing helplessly in the corner of the wall. In a dimly lit grand hall, countless figures were scattered around, humans and demons alike, all wrapped in demonic chi, making for a terrifying sight. All their gazes were fixed forward. On a stone platform suspended a red and purple orb of light, displaying a silhouette. This figure seemed to sit lazily on a throne made of bones, as if in another world. He too was surrounded by demonic chi, covered in thick armor, and at his feet lay a black lion with a ferocious face, 3 tails, each tail ending in a snake's head, hissing with tongues flickering. He was the heavenly demon Great Emperor, the ruler of the heavenly demon clan, and the mastermind behind the sky demon Great Sect. So you're saying, you're also unclear about who's pulling the strings behind the Xianyu divine dynasty? The voice of the heavenly demon Great Emperor emanated from within the orb. His tone was icy cold, quieting every heavenly demon in the hall. The black-robed elder at the forefront spoke up. Your Majesty, the opponent hails from Xianyu, the reincarnation land, and indeed we cannot discern any concrete information from the mortal world. The others concurred. Over the years they had sent many spies and even turned some people from the Xianyu divine dynasty, yet they were constantly unable to gather useful intelligence. The heavenly demon Great Emperor fell silent for a while before speaking. What is the stance of the Xianyu divine dynasty then? A woman in red responded. They wish to gather the souls of the dead. They want all beings in the great heavenly spirit land to perish, which, in a sense, aligns with our intentions because we too wish to destroy the great heavenly spirit land. The fingers of the heavenly demon Great Emperor began to tap on the armrest, adorned with skulls, the tapping sounds chilling everyone in the hall into silence. After a long while, the heavenly demon Great Emperor finally spoke. If that's the case, then let us fully unleash the great calamity upon the world, and let the great heavenly spirit land feel despair ahead of time. As his words fell, the 3-tailed black lion at his feet howled upwards, its roar deafening. The heavenly demons in the hall kneeled, silent, all staring fervently at the heavenly demon Great Emperor. As the year came to a close, with snow covering the great heaven and earth, soon to melt, the Supreme Sect began preparations for the Spring Festival. The Third Medicine Valley was also in the midst of preparing for the Spring Festival. Unlike previous years, it was said that Guan was planning a grand celebration, much to the anticipation of the disciples. Come on, tell me, what are you up to? Shenzhen urged Guan, looking quite beautiful today in a white dress and a silver jade phoenix crown, embodying elegance and nobility. As Guan was writing, he casually responded, You'll know when the time comes. This made Shenzhen even more curious, but no matter how much she pressed him, Guan simply wouldn't spill the beans. Feeling it futile, Shenzhen stood up to leave. It wasn't long after her departure that Wu Ju arrived, also inquiring about Guan's preparations. Now that Guan was linked with Sword Venerable Fu Dao, every word and action of his was the center of attention. Rumors of his preparing a grand celebration had the higher echelons of the sect abuzz. More and more of the upper-level members were convinced that Guan was Sword Venerable Fu Dao. If Sword Venerable Fu Dao was planning a celebration, how could they not be concerned? Nevertheless, Guan still did not reveal the truth, leaving Wu Ju to depart in frustration. In the following time, a stream of visitors came to see Guan down at the pavilion. Long Qing, holding a wooden stick, looked up at the second floor and asked Blood Prison Great Saint, You're guarding master every day. Do you have any insider news? Blood Prison Great Saint lay on the ground and glanced at him, ignoring the question. Long Qing squatted down, pulling out a white jade bottle from his storage bag, whispering in a mysterious tone. This is heart-cleansing jade honey, exceedingly rare. I have only 2 bottles, and am sharing one with you." The blood prison great saint opened his eyes and revealed a smile, saying, "You've put in some thought, kid, so I'll give you a hint. The master wants to create an immortal realm existence, right here in the valley, in the third medicine valley." Upon hearing this, Long Qing's eyes widened, and his heartbeat quickened. He carefully asked, "Master, whom will you choose?" "I have no idea," replied the blood prison great saint. Using his divine sense to open the bottle, the blood prison great saint drew out the liquid and swallowed it in one gulp. His bovine eyes then bent into a smile, clearly pleased. Long Qing stood up and turned to look towards the second floor, his imagination beginning to run wild. As the spring festival drew near, the grapevine buzzed with news that Sword Venerable Fudao of the Supreme Sect was about to create an immortal path realm existence. The higher ranks of the Supreme Sect kept the news from the ears of the disciples of various departments within the sect, suppressing the information. Once they had finished arranging the spring festival affairs for the Supreme Sect, they hurried over, eager to join the excitement. As noon approached, Vice Sect leader Ji Hantian entered the valley and was taken aback by the bustling scene. So many people. He even noticed that the big shots from the families had arrived faster than him. While pondering this, he went up to greet them. Even as Vice Sect leader, he still needed to greet those great cultivators proactively. At the entrance of the valley, several cultivators arrived, including Zhu Xi. Dressed in azure garments, Zhu Xi was curiously looking over the third medicine valley. Having first visited the Supreme Sect's subsect to learn about the relationship between the Supreme Sect and Sword Venerable Fudao, she wanted to establish herself there. Thus she came to the main sect. After some inquiries, the third medicine valley became her first choice. To be precise, it was the first choice for most new disciples entering the sect. However, entering the third medicine valley wasn't so easy now. Zhu Xi had barely managed to get the opportunity to visit the third medicine valley for the festival by giving gifts. Walking ahead of her was an elder from the book collection hall, brimming with excitement as if he were introducing his own domain. He was introducing the third medicine valley. He was on good terms with Guan, making him feel sort of at home here. Zhu Xi was curious about the valley master Guan. She had heard that this valley master was a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao, who didn't compete or fight over matters, was amiable with others, and was more than willing to train disciples. Inside the Supreme Sect, Guan had an excellent reputation. Zhu Xi hadn't heard a bad word about him. Traveling the world for hundreds of years, it was the first time she heard of such a remarkable person. Coupled with the earth-shattering exploits of Sword Venerable Fudao, she was looking forward to meeting Guan. Zhu Xi looked around, curious about everything inside the third medicine valley. As they approached the dojo, an Exian suddenly approached. The elder from the book collection hall greeted an Exian warmly. Guan had introduced an Exian to all his contacts within the Supreme Sect, and they were all aware of Guan's attitude towards an Exian. So everyone treated an Exian warmly. "Today, elderly, we must have a good drink, not returning until we're drunk. My master often talks about you," said an Exian with a bow and a hearty laugh. These words made elderly feel quite comfortable, his spine straightening up. He pinched his beard and glanced at the disciples beside him, who looked up to him in admiration. An Exian turned her gaze to Zhu Xi and asked with a smile, "May I ask if you are Zhu Xi, Miss Xu?" Stunned, Zhu Xi and the others, including elderly, looked at her in surprise. "I am. What about it?" Zhu Xi asked cautiously. While she was a cultivator of the void-crossing realm, and had even greater strength, she was very cautious within the Supreme Sect. It was her survival instinct. "Don't be nervous," an Exian said with a smile. "My master told me to take good care of you. He knew you would come." "Your master?" Zhu Xi grew even more nervous. She had encountered many great cultivators who could divine destiny, and she always kept her distance from such entities to avoid trouble. An Exian nodded and said, "My master is the Valley Master. Come on, I'll take you to settle in." After saying this, she bowed to elderly, excusing herself. Under everyone's watchful gaze, Zhu Xi didn't dare to flee and had no choice but to follow an Exian reluctantly. Elderly and his disciples were astonished. Zhu Shi had such a connection? Suddenly, Elderly felt the medicinal herbs he had collected for Gu An were a bit hot to handle. But thinking of Gu An's smiling face, he calmed down again. Gu An wasn't a petty person. At worst, he would return the herbs. Yes, that's it. He could also prepare a gift for Zhu Shi and take the opportunity to apologize to Gu An, thereby increasing his chances for more interaction. A smile spread across Elderly's face as he suddenly found Zhu Shi rather agreeable. On the other side, Zhu Shi couldn't help but ask why Gu An was looking for her, but an Xian said she didn't know either. You don't have to worry. If my master has noticed you, it must mean he has a good impression of you. Maybe he will even take you as his disciple. Just settle in comfortably as if it was your own home. And if you encounter any problems in the future, you can come to me. I forgot to tell you. I am the head disciple of the valley and in charge of everything, an Xian said, turning her head toward Zhu Shi with a gentle smile. Zhu Shi was touched by her smile, warming up to her and feeling her stress dissipate. With such a kind personality, the valley master might indeed be a rare good person. Zhu Shi thought to herself. Although Enzin's cultivation level was only at the nascent soul realm, she didn't look down on her. Instead, Zhu Shi wanted to deepen their friendship. An Xian thought to herself, she doesn't seem to recognize my master. Could she be the offspring of one of my master's old friends? She did not think of Zhu Shi as a genius. When she said Gu An might take Zhu Shi as a disciple, it was just a habit of making big promises, something she learned from Gu An. A few kind words didn't cost anything, and maybe she could forge a closer relationship. The two women chatted warmly as they proceeded. Underneath an old tree, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch stood up, looking at the commotion in the distance, and muttered, such clamor. Suddenly, he caught sight of someone, causing him to exclaim in surprise. It was a white-haired old man, leaning on a cane in one hand and resting the other on his waist, just entering the valley and looking around. The free immortal. Reincarnation tribulation. This aura feels so familiar, as if I've seen it somewhere. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch pondered to himself, his eyes fixed on the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man seemed to sense something, turned his head to look, and when he saw Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, his white eyebrows furrowed. Chapter 448. The strongest sword Dao Dahong Sword Heaven's Sword Intent. The white-robed elder gazed at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, contemplating with astonishment. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch also fixed his eyes on him, their gazes locked, and both could see the wariness in each other's eyes. The white-robed elder quickly shifted his gaze away, and continued onward. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had no intention of picking a fight either. After all, they bore no grudges against each other. During the reincarnation tribulation, he would often encounter other free immortals. If he were to confront each one, even Dahong Sword Heaven might not be able to protect him. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch headed toward 10,000 Sword Mountain. The number of visitors to the Third Medicine Valley was increasing, and 10,000 Sword Mountain had also become a spectacle that many people came to observe. An Xian had already arranged for hundreds of disciples to guard the perimeter of 10,000 Sword Mountain, to prevent outsiders from trespassing. There can be no mistake about the sword intent on this mountain. It's definitely Sword Venerable Fudeos. With such an abundance of sword intent and each one distinct upon careful observation, what could the old Sword Venerable be trying to do? Perhaps he's creating a land of inheritance. This mountain is too lowly for someone like him. The sect leader should assist in building a taller one. That makes sense. Sword Venerable Fudeo's Sword Dao deserves the tallest mountain in the world. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch arrived and heard the discussions, his lips twitching involuntarily. He wasn't angry that people said Sword Venerable Fudeo's Sword Dao was the strongest. He was merely amazed at the shamelessness of these mortals. Trying to attract the attention of Sword Venerable Fudao with such tactics? Ridiculous. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch came to the back of the crowd and spoke up. It's not about the height of the mountain. Sword Venerable Fudeo's Sword Dao is indeed the strongest. But precisely because he is so powerful, even if he were to place just one sword anywhere, it would suppress all Sword Dao in the world and command respect from all beings. Upon these words, Everybody looked his way, while those who had just been flattering Sword Venerable Fudao inwardly gasped in surprise. Another expert? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch stood tall and proud, continuing to describe just how powerful Sword Venerable Fudao's sword Dao was. Inside the house, Guan couldn't help but smirk, finding the man's words quite pleasing to the ear. He also understood Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's intentions, but he would not take him as a disciple. It would mess up the seniority. However, giving pointers on Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's sword Dao was an option. Guan put down his pen, stood up, and prepared to meet people. With so many important figures present, he couldn't stay cooped up and risk being impolite. Of course, the most important thing was he couldn't miss such an excellent opportunity to make a grand appearance. Guan quickly tidied up the desk and then descended the stairs. He threw a glance at Blood Prison Great Saint, who immediately rose and scuttled after him. Along the way, numerous cultivators and disciples greeted Guan, and he responded with a smile to each one. Elsewhere, Zhu Shi stepped out of the courtyard arranged for her by an Xian, wanting to stroll around. Even from a great distance, she could see the star-like crowd around Guan, extremely conspicuous. When she recognized his true face, she was taken aback. How could it be him? Zhu Shi couldn't forget the enigmatic senior she had met on Mortal World Peak, initially thinking he had been toying with her. However, after she began cultivating the stepping path of Age's step, she came to understand the formidable power of this divine skill. Even after hundreds of years, she had not encountered a more potent skill than the stepping path of Age's step. At that moment, she suddenly relaxed. If it were this senior, perhaps he truly intended to take her as a disciple. Previously, she thought that Guan wanted to scheme against her, but now that she knew he was Sword Venerable Fudao, her worries evaporated like smoke in clouds. She saw Guan nodding to her with a smile, which flattered and startled her, so she hurriedly lifted her hand in salute. Guan did not approach but was escorted by the crowd toward the dojo, which made Zhu Shi breathe a sigh of relief. Facing Guan in public still put a lot of pressure on her. Now, she began to look forward to the upcoming life in Medicine Valley, and the grand ceremony mentioned by the disciples of the valley. Guan, up to this point, are you still unwilling to reveal who you are making an immortal? LV Baitian asked with a smile as he walked beside Guan. The others followed with teasing comments. Although they were jesting with Guan, they all maintained proper decorum, not daring to offend him. Guan pretended to be astonished and asked, "How did you all find out?" "The news has already spread. Come on, tell me. Who are you helping to become an immortal? Is it your disciple?" LV Baitian urged. Even the current supreme sect, when faced with the immortal path realm, must make every effort to win them over. The most crucial point was that Guan was creating an immortal, which holds a fatal attraction for a sect. If they could create one immortal, they could create a second and third. Moreover, they all felt that Guan was about to elevate someone to immortality in one go, not just giving them an opportunity to grow gradually. Guan laughed and said, "The ancient hour is nearly upon us, don't worry." LV Baitian was not content, but alas, no matter how much he pressed, Guan refused to give an answer. Chapter 449. Is there a second person in the world? Blood Prison Great Saint arrived before Guan and reverently knelt down, as if he were about to prostrate himself. Seeing him maintaining such an attitude at this time warmed Guan's heart. His efforts in raising him had not been in vain. "His name is Bull Demon King, huh? Don't tell me there's also a son Wukong? Ha! Don't underestimate him, he's quite cunning. Indeed, when I first touched his horns, he wanted to retaliate against me." "Shush, you can't speak about such things. Why would you send a bull to do it? To kill him as a part of the celebration for immortal creation." The cultivators and disciples below spectated and speculated, some comments stirring the Blood Prison Great Saint's fur to stand on end in anger. Guan didn't mind it, for the Blood Prison Great Saint's attitude was inseparable from his own harsh words. Aside from Guan, nobody liked them, much like the white spirit rat. It was time to begin. That's what Guan thought, his eyes turning fierce. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Guan took out the fate-determining pen, allowing it to spin in his hand before gripping it firmly. The tip pointed at Blood Prison Great Saint. Everyone's gaze followed suit, falling upon Blood Prison Great Saint, unsure of what Guan was about to do. Today, I shall let my mount transform into the immortal realm. Everyone, watch closely. Guan's voice sounded, echoing through the third Medicine Valley. Upon hearing this, everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. He intends to elevate this demon bull to the immortal realm? Impossible. In that moment, even Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and the white-robed elder furrowed their brows. Ji Xiaoyu and Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor likewise found it unbelievable. Their higher realms of existence made them acutely aware of how difficult it was to leap from the core formation realm to the nirvana realm. Even with great powers pouring in their essence or imparting cultivation levels, it was impossible. No matter how they looked at it, Blood Prison Great Saint didn't seem like a great power reincarnated. There were no traces of reincarnation tribulation's cause and effect, nor any signs of a hidden stronger cultivation level. LV Batian was stunned, even found it ridiculous. Could this uncultured bull also achieve immortality? The crowd below fell silent, and before anyone could react, Guan wielded his pen, sprinkling ink onto the body of Blood Prison Great Saint. Instantly, the seal of path of returning primordial spirit within Blood Prison Great Saint dissipated, and he felt that long-lost power surge through him. His entire bovine body ignited. Primordial reincarnation skill release. Blood Prison Great Saint roared inwardly. As he just released his Mahayana realm aura, his cultivation level skyrocketed, causing his presence to burst forth like a flood breaking free, reaching the heavens. Boom! A terrifying aura erupted from within him, forming a pillar of flames that shot into the clouds, dispersing the accumulating mists and spreading fiery waves across the sky, plunging the third Medicine Valley quickly into crimson. Everyone looked up, even Zhu Luo Sword Monarch unable to remain composed. How is this possible? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's pupils quivered, a storm raging in his heart. Judging by Blood Prison Great Saint's surging aura, this demon was likely to surpass the Nirvana realm. From the core formation realm to a loose immortal in one go? How could this be? The path of cultivation could allow this? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch glanced again at Blood Prison Great Saint atop the platform. Still, he detected no hint of reincarnation causality. Could this rascal have concealed his cultivation level? But that shouldn't be possible either. How could he not see even the slightest clue? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's mind was in turmoil. The white-robed elder, still trapped within the reincarnation tribulation, also watched Blood Prison Great Saint in astonishment. Your Majesty, this is Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor turned to Ji Xiaoyu beside him, hoping she could provide an explanation. Ji Xiaoyu took a deep breath, slowly exhaling a phrase. Baffling indeed. Such fortuity is beyond our comprehension. Su Jia, who also had encountered Blood Prison Great Saint, stood dumbfounded. He too had dealt with Blood Prison Great Saint. Guan had wanted to prove himself because Blood Prison Great Saint scoffed at his genius demeanor, telling him that for all his talent, there were countless others far more formidable than him. So Su Jia thought Guan looked down upon him, and had Blood Prison Great Saint convey that attitude. Now as he looked at Blood Prison Great Saint again, it suddenly dawned on him that Blood Prison Great Saint hadn't lied. The Nirvana realm seemed an eternity away for him, no matter how talented he was. Guan had easily created an immortal realm entity, plunging him into a sea of boundless confusion. Was he truly not a genius? Was he just better than the disciples of the Supreme Sect, amounting to nothing in reality? Another genius remained stunned, Zhu Shi. She considered herself well-informed, yet she had never heard of such a feat. How did he do it? How profound was his Dao level? LV Xian, after a brief shock, became excited, clenching his fists as though he were the one making a breakthrough. He was amazed by Guan's methods, but the thought of being the only talent Guan acknowledged made him glow with pride. Even with the capability to create immortals at will, Guan still recognized his talent. What did that mean? LV Xian's self-confidence soared. He puffed out his chest and began to look down on others with laughter. Could he truly be Sword Venerable Fu Dao? Wu Ju's eyes widened, his body stiffened to rigidity. He had worked so hard for his Dao level, only to have it surpassed by the Blood Prison Great Saint in an instant, which made him question his life. Xin Zhen's gaze shone brightly as she stared at Guan, her eyes filled with infatuation. She most admired the Sword Venerable Fu Dao, and her favorite peer and friend was Guan. Even without the identity of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, she sincerely admired Gu An's talent. When Gu An's identity coincided with that of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, Xin Zhen's admiration and fondness for Guan reached its peak. The imposing aura of the Blood Prison Great Saint whipped up a gale that fluttered Gu An's robe and hair. He turned his head to look at the Blood Prison Great Saint. The corners of his mouth lifted into a smile. This scene, witnessed by the crowd below, made him seem so vigorous and high-spirited. Could there be a second person in the world capable of scribing immortals? Everyone was shocked by Gu An's methods, and the aura of the Blood Prison Great Saint disturbed the entire Supreme Sect. As more and more cultivators flew toward the Third Medicine Valley, Ji Hantian came back to his senses and immediately went to stop other disciples from coming. Gu An's methods were too unfathomable, and he felt they should not be exposed. Not only did he think this, but LV Batian and the other higher-ups shared the same view. If news of this were to spread, could the disciples continue to cultivate peacefully? Surely a large number of disciples would come seeking Gu An's favor upon hearing the news. And other sects would go crazy trying to please Gu, and LV Batian also flew into the sky to take charge of the situation. He turned his head in the air and looked toward Guan standing on the platform, whose presence could not be overshadowed by the Blood Prison Great Saint's imposing aura. LV Batian suddenly felt a bit dazed. He felt that the Supreme Sect could not retain Guan, nor were they worthy of him. Without Sword Venerable Fu Dao, how many times would the Supreme Sect have been destroyed by now? Thinking this, LV Batian suddenly felt relieved. Why continue to suppress? Such an extraordinary event surely could not be hidden. Guan, do you disdain the position of sect leader because you will live longer than the Supreme Sect? LV Batian looked at Guan and sighed softly, his voice so low as if only he could hear it. Thunderous clouds rolled in from the horizon, gathering above his head, accumulating heavenly might, and casting a quick darkness over the land and sky. Amid the vast and mighty aura, the Blood Prison Great Saint slowly stood up, his fur bursting apart, his form changing. A blood-red robe appeared out of nowhere, wrapping around the bull's body before it had fully shapeshifted, aiding its transformation into human form. The bull's head shrank rapidly, revealing a handsome and unruly face, his arrogance even more pronounced than that of An Hao and LV Xian, the once invincible Blood Prison Great Saint, who had dominated his own great heaven and earth, had returned. Underneath the mystic pure tree, a plump white spirit rat held a fruit, staring blankly at the figure of the Blood Prison Great Saint. The fruit fell to the ground unnoticed. An ex-scion stood at the edge of the platform, looking at the true form of the Blood Prison Great Saint, and secretly marveled. So this is what he looks like? Or is he imitating Master? But no matter how I look at it, Master is more handsome. Even with that bull's head donning a handsome appearance, it still seems punchable. Feeling the quickly intensifying aura of the Blood Prison Great Saint, Anzin's competitive spirit was spurred. One day, she would become stronger than the Blood Prison Great Saint, and she would even surpass her senior brother. And how? The heavenly tribulation was about to arrive, and all the people in the valley were not frightened by its might. They all stared blankly at the Blood Prison Great Saint. It was unclear who spoke first, but the Third Medicine Valley instantly became like a pot boiling over, the clamor bursting forth, threatening to overturn the heavens. How is that possible? Has the demon bull really become an immortal? He is not just a disciple of Sword Venerable Fu Dao. He is Sword Venerable Fu Dao. My heavens! How did he do it? Could it be that this bull was always an immortal? Immortal my ass, I've known the Bull Demon King for 500 years, watching him nap every day. Can an immortal do that? That's right, this bull has indeed been around for a long time, not just a recent appearance. Everyone was immensely excited, fervently discussing the Blood Prison Great Saint, and Guan's gaze turned towards the heavens, sensing a powerful presence rushing from the silent destruction domain. It was the aura of the heavenly demon, stronger than the Juluo sword monarch, truly half a step into the Tao fruit realm. The heavenly demon emperor. Interesting. Gu An's eyes sparkled, his thoughts playful. In the dim great hall, the sickly green candlelight flickered as if demons were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. The Annihilation God Emperor sat cross-legged on a large cauldron, surrounded by a misty fog that faintly revealed swirling ghosts. His face remained pitch black as if a black hole, his true features unseen. "Come in." The Annihilation God Emperor spoke, his tone indifferent. As his words fell, a surge of demonic chi bubbled from the darkness ahead, quickly approaching him. It was the Heavenly Demon Emperor. The Heavenly Demon Emperor stood in front of the cauldron, looking up at the Annihilation God Emperor perched above, and asked, "Divine Emperor, are you waiting for a descendant of the Dragon Clan?" The Annihilation God Emperor responded with a hum, his seated posture revealing nothing of his emotions. The Heavenly Demon Emperor asked, "If you suspect that person is in the great heavenly spirit land, why not eradicate the great heaven and earth directly? Wouldn't trading the lives of all its beings for the peace of the vast cosmos be worthwhile?" The Annihilation God Emperor's head tilted slightly, as if he were looking at the Heavenly Demon Emperor. The Heavenly Demon Emperor was not afraid and continued, "You are not a paragon of virtue, you have destroyed numerous great heavens and earth. Could it be that you do not actually wish to kill that person, perhaps even to protect him? It is said that the primordial ancestor of the Dragon Clan was not Emperor Long Xian but his father, who was known as the Emperor of Heavenly Dragon. He founded the battle court but swiftly fell. Emperor Long Xian was merely heir to his legacy. Moreover, I heard that Emperor Long Xian was your disciple. Is that so?" The Annihilation God Emperor fixed his gaze on the Heavenly Demon Emperor and said, "Heavenly Demon Emperor, though you have become an emperor, are you sure you want to provoke me?" Chapter 450. Chaos Heavenly Tao, Demon God Xianhuang facing the threat of the Annihilation God Emperor. The Heavenly Demon Emperor showed a smile and said, "Divine Emperor, you should understand my meaning. If not for your promotion, how could I have today? It is because of this kindness that I wish to remind you of the cost of doing this." The Annihilation God Emperor looked down at him and asked, "Have you already defected to the battle court?" The Heavenly Demon Emperor replied, "The Disaster Demon Emperor did indeed seek me out, but the battle court cannot cross the boundary gate, and I have no need to defect. However, you are different. You don't belong to this universe and will leave sooner or later." The Annihilation God Emperor fell silent. The Heavenly Demon Emperor's eyes flickered as he said, "Why don't I help you eliminate that person, so you won't be seen as having failed Emperor Long Xian?" Boom. A terrifying aura burst forth from the Annihilation God Emperor's body, continuously impacting the Heavenly Demon Emperor, and causing the demonic chi around him to disintegrate and reconvene. The Heavenly Demon Emperor slightly bowed his head, his face cast into darkness. "It seems you are not sure you can eradicate the great heavenly spirit land, and you want to rely on my strength," the Annihilation God Emperor's voice sounded. The Heavenly Demon Emperor took a deep breath and said, "Our Sky Demon Clan's existence is to eradicate the great heaven and earth of the Heavenly Tao. It is our clan's mission. If I do not do it, sooner or later I will turn to dust and my path will be in vain. Nowadays, the great heavenly spirit land has the power of Xianyu, the sword Tao of Dahong Sword Heaven, and the unknown origin of the free immortal. I indeed do not have absolute confidence. Divine Emperor, although you have transcended, you still belong to the chaos. Such a stance destines you to be incompatible with the creatures of the heavenly Tao. The descendants of the Dragon Clan, by leveraging reincarnation and entering the heavenly Tao, have already stood against you." The Annihilation God Emperor retracted his aura, thought for a moment, and raised his right hand, gesturing slightly. A towering figure appeared from the darkness behind him, shrouded in flickering flames, its true face impossible to see. The Heavenly Demon Emperor's expression changed at the sight of this figure. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Demon God Xianhuang, how is it possible? How did you bring him?" The Annihilation God Emperor did not reply, but gently waved his hand. The demon god Xianhuang opened a pair of eyes that resembled two suns of divine might, filled with an oppressing presence. In front of these eyes, the heavenly demon emperor seemed as insignificant as dust. The great Tao is omnipresent, and even a trace of realization is worth more than 1,000 years of arduous cultivation. Even without enlightenment, occasional meditation could soothe the restlessness in one's heart, making the journey ahead more stable. There is an old Chinese saying that haste makes waste, which also applies to the pursuit of immortality. Guan spoke gently, guiding all the guests with his Tao. Even the strong figures like Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and the man in white robe fell into deep thought. Su Jie stood among the crowd, feeling profoundly enlightened. In fact, over the years, he felt very impatient, with anger brewing in his heart. If not dispersed, it could become a heart demon in the future. Right now, listening to his master's voice, his heart fell into an unprecedented calm. It was a very comfortable sensation. Time flew swiftly. With Gu An's help, the Blood Prison Great Saint's tribulation crossing process was extremely fast. As dusk arrived, the heavenly tribulation dissipated. The Blood Prison Great Saint successfully crossed the tribulation and became a loose immortal realm first layer being. He was able to leap directly over the Nirvana realm, thanks in large part to the medicinal herbs and elixirs that Guan had invested in him over the years. Feeling the powerful cultivation level of the loose immortal realm, the Blood Prison Great Saint had an urge to let out a long howl, but he restrained himself. He descended from the sky and landed in front of Guan, knelt on one knee, and with a fist in palm saluted. "Thank you, Master, for your grace. I will forever serve by your side." His voice was loud and clear, causing many people to awaken. This public declaration also confirmed that his becoming an immortal was a gift from Guan. The thunderclouds in the sky hadn't yet dispersed, and the edges of the clouds were tinged with a reddish glow as nightfall approached. Guan helped the Blood Prison Great Saint up, and then turned to look at the audience below. Seeing that most of them had already awakened, he raised his hand and smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is the New Year festival. Time to drink and be merry." As his words fell, an Exian gestured with a wave of her hand, and a large number of Medicine Valley disciples started to move. Boom, boom, boom. Fireworks rose from the mountains at the edge of Medicine Valley, their thunderous sounds awakening everyone still immersed in the contemplation of the heavens and the earth. Suddenly awakened, they felt a sense of loss and even wished to recapture their previous experience. They started to seriously consider Gu An's words about comprehending nature. The New Year celebration at the Third Medicine Valley officially began, and Guan, accompanied by the Blood Prison Great Saint, stepped off the stage. He immediately found himself in the spotlight, while many surrounded the Blood Prison Great Saint, lavishing praises and asking him about his experience of becoming immortal. The Blood Prison Great Saint stood with hands on hips, full of vigor. He spoke openly about the power of a loose immortal. His gaze turned to the distance, where he fixed his eyes on the white spirit wrapped beneath the mystic pure tree, frightening it so much that it immediately burrowed underground, vanishing from sight. The Blood Prison Great Saint cracked a grin, his horned and blood-red hair making him look like an Azura in this world, his smile eerily thrilling. Chapter 451 Heavenly Tao Theory. The Spring Festival at the Third Medicine Valley was a great success, with everyone drinking through the night, sharing stories, and growing closer. Guan was quite busy that evening, and even though he appeared enthusiastic, he could sense that everyone was acting reserved around him, except for an Exian and Shenzhen. Even Wu Ju had changed from before. Perhaps this was the downside of being too powerful. Guan stood by the window, watching his friends leave one after the other. The morning sunlight glowed, making his departing friends seem as if they were leaving wrapped in a rosy dawn. After a while, Guan turned back, went to his desk, and began to write about mind cultivation because last night, LV Baitian had expressed a desire to establish a method of heart cultivation, and disseminate it throughout the Supreme Sect to help its disciples have a firmer path ahead. Guan hence offered many suggestions, such as uniform teaching of cultivation by the master to avoid neglecting any disciples due to a lack of close relations. The Supreme Sect no longer needed to intentionally cultivate geniuses. A strong foundation was more important, which required the effort of all disciples. A sect with geniuses might not be strong, but a sect where most disciples are outstanding was surely not weak. Guan created a 100-year cultivation education plan for the Supreme Sect. Every disciple upon entry would unconditionally receive 100 years of cultivation techniques and spell guidance from the sect unless they violated the rules, ensuring each disciple would possess notable strength and become eligible cultivators. LV Batian was moved by the plan. Although the investment would be substantial, if successful, the Supreme Sect would undoubtedly become a true Holy Land. Of course, the most crucial aspect was that the suggestion came from Sword Venerable Fudao. He believed that no one would dare to obstruct it. If resources were lacking, those families would surely rush to donate, meaning the plan would certainly succeed if they desired it. I wonder how long the Supreme Sect will last, but taking care of the majority of the disciples' lives is also amassing good karma. Guan murmured to himself, feeling content. He now cared more about intangible things than benefits. Having inherited many reincarnation lives and gained many insights, he wanted to distill insights from his own life. The path to the Great Tao is long and full of obstacles, and understanding the Great Tao isn't something that can be directly enhanced by lifespan, but with the ability to evolve through life, he had more time to comprehend the Great Tao. A spring breeze blew in from the window, swaying a green flower on the small altar on the table. Seeing Guan enter the book collection hall, the blood prison great saint didn't follow him in, but instead wandered around in front of the hall's entrance. With long horns on his head and draped in blood-colored hair, his presence attracted attention wherever he went. Though the Supreme Sect had many demon clan disciples, few demons possessed such an outstanding and sharp demeanor. He unabashedly displayed his loose immortal aura, leaving others curious about his cultivation level. Within the Supreme Sect, even if one encountered someone from the Immortal Path realm, disciples would not panic because they believed that no Immortal Path powerhouse would dare cause trouble at the Supreme Sect. They were protected by true Immortal Path Supremes. This time, Guan came to the book collection hall not to donate books, but to buy them. The book collection hall was helping him collect rare books from across the world, and he did not refuse. With his Tao level he could predict outcomes, but he had not done so. He preferred the feeling of flipping through the pages of a book. Even with power surpassing that of great heavenly spirit land, he kept as many mundane habits as possible. Over the years, in addition to the growth of his lifespan, he had gained a deeper understanding of fate and karma. He could wield two kinds of heavenly Tao and great Tao divine skills with even greater might. This was also the benefit of remaining a part of the secular world. Compared to deduction, interacting and living among people allowed for a better understanding of others' emotions and the realization of life. When the elders from the book collection hall knew of Guan's arrival, they flocked to him, eagerly recommending the rare books each had found. Guan asked them to present their findings one by one without rush, as he planned to stay for an ancient hour. Hearing that Guan would stay for an ancient hour, everyone calmed down, and the smiles on their faces never faded. They began to recommend books in order of their seniority. Guan listened attentively, but the first few books did not attract him. "Brother Gu, this book I have is extraordinary. Its origin is unknown to anyone. It suddenly appeared overseas and has been praised by many. Some say this book can predict the future," said an elder while presenting a blue-covered book mysteriously. Guan looked at the book's cover and saw 3 words: Heavenly Tao Theory. Guan raised his hand and drew the book into his grasp. The elder was not surprised, accustomed to his methods, and continued to introduce the commotion that Heavenly Tao Theory had caused. Guan was captivated from the first page. Heavenly Tao, all living beings perish for the Heavenly Tao. The Great Tao perishes for the Heavenly Tao. Was this a book criticizing the Heavenly Tao? Guan grew even more curious and continued to flip through, wanting to see how this book could predict the future. More than one elder had heard of Heavenly Tao theory, and according to them, there were only 9 true copies of Heavenly Tao theory. The rest were imitations. To possess Heavenly Tao theory was to gain extraordinary power, but it could also bring misfortune, leading to death and the annihilation of one's Tao, an unpredictable revival. After a long time, Guan closed the book and smiled. This book is good. I'll take it. In the future, if there is more Heavenly Tao theory, you can keep it for me. The elder beamed upon hearing this, patting his chest and readily agreeing. He did not request any compensation. To be on good terms with Guan was the greatest reward. To call oneself a friend of Guan, within the supreme sect, who would dare to disrespect him? If someone dared to impersonate, cultivators would come knocking on their door. It was said that the supreme sect had established a dark hall, which included oversight of such matters to prevent anyone from tarnishing the reputations of Guan or Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan asked them to bring out all the books they had prepared for him. He couldn't waste their kindness. Finally, Guan left the book collection hall with everyone accompanying him. Seeing Guan emerge, the blood prison great saint immediately hurried over. Guan glanced at him and said, "You are already a loose immortal. Don't bother with him." The blood prison great saint, who had just purchased a curious treasure, gave an awkward smile and coughed. "I was just playing with him. I see him as a kid. Why would I bully him?" The child he referred to was the white spirit rat. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.